Good morning, everyone. Andrew Douglas of the Action News 5 digital desk. For decades, NASA and NOAA have been keeping careful watch of the Earth's climate, and each year, the agencies release an update to the hottest years on record. Yesterday, they added 2022 to the books. Let's talk about that. We have Dennis Felixson, a NASA research scientist, joining us here on the Action News 5 digital desk to talk about the global temperature data for 2022. Dennis, good morning. Tell us about the latest data.
Having me. Well, with 2022 having come to a close, we can now say that last year was the 5th warmest year on record, tied with 2015. These records go back to the late 1800s. So over that time, 2022 was the 5th warmest. And actually, the last 9 years were the warmest years on that record. Last year was particularly interesting because it was a La Nina year. La Nina is the counterpart to El Nino, and during La Nina years, we tend to have a temporary cooling of the Earth. So even during that temporary cooling, 2022 still came in as one of the warmest years we've ever measured.
You know, it's interesting, Dennis. We had something this week that measured, I guess, the ozone in the atmosphere across the world, and it said that the ozone layer is actually growing. I don't know if that's part of this, but I know that that is something that people have been carefully watching.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as you probably know, ozone, the hole in the ozone was a huge story back in the 90s when I was growing up. That's actually part of the reason I got interested in being a NASA Earth scientist. So the interesting thing about this is that climate change has all sorts of impacts, ozone being one of them, and it's also a driver. There are all these feedbacks in the climate system, but it's all interconnected, and that's one of the coolest parts about working at NASA and with satellite data is we get to study the Earth as kind of a whole system and look at different impacts that climate is having, relationship to the ozone, what the oceans are doing, the surface temperature of the Earth, and the impacts that climate change is having on extreme events that we're measuring all around the world.
You know, it's interesting. You mentioned the 5th hottest on record last year, but the story about the ozone layer was that the ozone layer was actually growing. It was actually a good thing, and the hole wasn't as big as it was years ago. How does that counterbalance or balance with the climate data from 2022?
That's right. So that's a good point. If I remember right, we had, the ozone hole was a big story back in the 90s, and then CFCs were banned partially as the result of us discovering this hole in the ozone layer. And that actually had a very positive and kind of fast impact in terms of climate, where the ozone hole saw the ozone hole start to shrink. So it was a direct impact of some policy to ban CFCs. Now, those kind of things are great, and it's nice to see that. But the trend of global warming is continuing, and year after year, on average, when we look over 10-year spans, the Earth is continuing to warm. And so while those kind of things like banning CFCs and the effect it had on the ozone hole are great to see, it's not enough to reverse this overall year after year trend of warming that we're seeing.
I'm sure a lot of these satellites that NASA and NOAA release into space help understand climate, ozone, keeping track of everything. How do those new satellites help really kind of understand the science behind it all?
So from space, we have this really unique vantage point where we have many satellites that are collecting different measurements of different parts of the Earth system all at once. And collectively, we get a much better understanding of the Earth system acting as one whole system with these different components acting in tandem. So last year, 2 of the satellites that we launched, GOES and JPSS, these are launched by NASA and operated by NOAA. These are just the latest in a series of satellites that help us continue to monitor the weather and understand the impact that climate is having on weather and on extreme events. There's another satellite we launched called SWOT, S-W-O-T, Surface Water and Ocean Topography, a really cool satellite that's going to give us look at all of the water that's sitting on the surface of the Earth. So these are oceans, lakes, rivers. Every 21 days, we're going to get a complete snapshot of what's happening. So it's really amazing what we can do from this unique vantage point of space that we can't get from other kinds of measurements on the ground.
So, Dennis, a question for you, because I hear this a lot from some of the critics of this and global warming, climate change, is that, okay, if we do some of the things, for example, from the Paris Climate Accord, and we implement some of those standards, that, okay, 30, 40, maybe 50 years from now, our temperature will be reduced by 0.1% 50 years from now. And so, the idea is that we give up all this stuff for just a small fraction of a fraction difference. What do you say to that?
So that's a great question. And these numbers might seem small, but their impact is huge. So even though, for example, since the late 1800s, the surface temperature of the Earth has warmed as the result of human emissions by about 2 degrees Fahrenheit on average. 2 degrees Fahrenheit might seem really small, right? Does it matter if it's 70 degrees outside or 72? That's not going to affect what you put on that morning to go out, right? But the impacts it has are huge, even those small numbers. We're already seeing big increases in extreme events. Hurricanes that are making landfall are able to intensify a lot more quickly because of ocean warming. They're also able to carry a lot more precipitation, and that causes real damage to people and to infrastructure that we have on the coasts. We know that the wildfire seasons are getting longer. That's leaving more and more areas exposed to fire damage. Droughts are getting more intense. Heat waves, the atmospheric rivers that we saw hit California last week were intense as they were because the climate is warming. So every little bit that we can do to mitigate it 30, 40 years from now, even tenths of a degree will matter in terms of the impact of these extreme events.
And again, playing the other side here, Dennis, while we have you here, okay, so the world has been around for billions of years, and it's constantly warming and cooling and warming and cooling. We only have data from, as you mentioned, the late 1800s. So how are we supposed to say that things weren't hotter in medieval times? You know what I mean?
Yeah, another great question. So the temperature data, the most reliable temperature data, direct measurements of temperature goes back to the 1800s. But we actually have other records that go back much longer than that. For example, ice cores that we've dug up from deep in the interior of Antarctica and Greenland give us a way to estimate the temperature going back hundreds of thousands of years. And that kind of information lets us know that, number one, the Earth has definitely not been this hot in at least 10,000 years and possibly 100,000 years. And again, from that longer term data, we know that the rate at which the Earth is warming now is unprecedented. We've never seen this in ice core records that go back those hundreds of thousands of years. So not only is the Earth hotter now than it has been in 10,000 years, but it's also warming much more quickly than that 100,000 year ice core record that we know of.
You know, it's a really interesting conversation, Dennis. I appreciate it very much. Where can people go online for more information?
So you can find us on the web at nasa.gov/Earth. You can go to noaa.gov, NOAA.gov. And for you social media lovers out there, you can follow us at NASA Earth on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, and at NOAA to follow NOAA.
Okay, Dennis Felixson, NASA science and NASA research scientist. We appreciate you, and I appreciate this conversation very much.
Thanks very much for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, so let's talk now about our forecast here, just the weather that we're dealing with in Memphis, and it's been like a 30-degree difference over the last 24 hours. Remember, we were experiencing 60s, 70s about this time yesterday. Much, much different after that cold front moved through with the rain that we had yesterday. This is a live look from our High Five camera. Still kind of cloudy out there. Temperatures in the 30s across much of the Mid-South. You can see those clouds definitely, and the wind just kind of just more prevalent there, I guess, in this one as we are dealing with much cooler temperatures, cloud cover, and a lot of wind out there. Let's get an update on the weekend forecast right now with meteorologist Brittany Bryant.
Good morning. We have a cold front that is now pushed east of us. You probably felt that that temperature dropping as that cold air moved in yesterday behind the front. Well, now we're dry, although there could be a few flurries falling at any point of the day. Since we have clouds in place, that means that we have enough moisture from the middle to lower portions of the atmosphere for us to possibly get flurries and maybe even some sleet. 10 o'clock in the morning, first alert futurecast showing clearing in eastern Arkansas, clouds in West Tennessee, North Mississippi. If we did see any snow or sleet, it'd probably be later in the day by 3 o'clock here. Notice temperatures above freezing this whole time, so anything that falls is not going to stick. But there could be some sleet over towards areas like Corinth and Ashland. Possibility for a snow sleet mixture. The pink would be the sleet. This bluish purpley color here would be the snow at 5:30. Some of that in Ashland and Fayette County. Spots like Selmer, Corinth, Brownsville getting sleet. We may also see some of this in Shelby County, especially areas like Collierville and Arlington, Lakeland. So eastern portions of Shelby County would have the best bet for getting any of that. And it doesn't last long. By 9 o'clock tonight, the moisture moves east as that system continues to push off towards the Atlantic. We'll no longer have any of that left over by 9 or 10 o'clock tonight. The rest of the evening is dry and even clouds clear out. It'll feel chilly today. We'll have actual temperatures around 40 degrees. That's why none of that's going to stick to the ground. But because of the winds, it feels a lot colder. It'll feel like the 20s all morning. We'll feel like 33 at 3 o'clock and still feeling like the lower 30s tonight. Now, as far as your wind gusts go, that's what's making it feel so much colder. We have wind gusts 20 to 25 miles per hour this morning, probably around 20 miles per hour with those northwest winds through 6 o'clock. After that, winds will start to die down. So wind chills won't be a huge factor if you have any Friday night plans after around 7 o'clock tonight. The high today, as I mentioned, is 40 degrees. Low temperatures tonight, though, will be back down to the upper 20s. And like I said, you could see some light snow or some sleet before 9 o'clock. After that, will be dry with a clear sky. Let's look at these temperatures for the weekend. 47 degrees on Saturday. And then on Sunday, a little bit warmer, high of 57. Not bad with sunshine in place both days this weekend. If you want to check that weekend forecast or get more details on that First Alert Futurecast with the snow and sleet chance that I was talking about, you can see that always on our First Alert weather app. Search for WMC and you can download that one for free. Our First Alert 7-day forecast showing a nice warming trend. Upper 50s Sunday. We're at 62 degrees on Monday. I have a first alert to some rain in the forecast on Monday. Most of that will be late in the day, late afternoon into the evening. Tuesday we dry out again. We're in the mid 60s, near 70 degrees on Wednesday, but a cold front moves through Wednesday. That's going to bring a chance for some thunderstorms, some which might be severe, something for us to monitor. And then by Thursday, behind the front, we're back down to the 50s.
Okay, Andrew Douglas in the Action News 5 digital desk. Region 1 Health is now offering inpatient what's called palliative care. That's Regional 1 Health offering palliative care. I'm not even sure if I'm saying it right. It's for patients with complex medical needs that focus on the whole person. It's designed for patients of all ages and all stages of a serious illness and condition. Let's bring in someone who knows a lot of what we're talking about here, who's in charge of it at Regional 1 Health. That's Jeffrey Nelson there. He's the director of palliative care and assistant professor at UT Health Science Center. Dr. Nelson, am I saying it right?
You know, it is such a hard word to say. I wish we could brand it differently, but you're right on. Palliative care.
Okay, palliative care. What is it?
Besides being a hard word to say, it's a newer medical specialty, and what we focus on really is quality of life oriented care for people that have advanced chronic illness, people with terminal illness oftentimes. And in the hospital, what we do a lot is we help translate these big life-changing things that have happened acutely so that families and patients are able to decide on what care they want as well as possible.
Okay, so give me an example of when palliative care would be in use. Is it, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, maybe someone with stage 4 cancer or something like that?
Sure, and I think as you introduced it, we oftentimes thought of when it's stage 4 and we think, oh no, someone is terminal, but we can be brought in much earlier. We can be brought in at diagnosis. So for instance, we recently have a patient who was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. They were having an exquisite amount of pain after surgery and some chemotherapy. They're in the very beginning process of treatment. It is a localized cancer, but we're brought in to help treat that pain, to help them feel as well as possible so they can be functional and get more treatment. So that's one aspect of it. I think we really understand the cancer care part of it. Some other things that happen in the hospital, especially Regional 1 being the level 1 trauma center, is when people have that life-defining traumatic event, be it a car wreck or some other accident, the family oftentimes can be almost overwhelmed by the amount of care and care options there are. And our job in those situations is we don't have to worry about doing the surgery like the other specialties do. We get to focus solely on helping the family filter the information and understand the message and really know what their loved one is facing.
So let me ask you this, doctor. I mean, what's the difference between palliative care and hospice care?
Thank you for asking this. There, in my mind, is a big difference. So hospice care is really defined by a philosophy of knowing myself or my loved one has an illness that medicine is unable to cure, and that they will die from this illness. I am accepting of this process as much as I can be. I want to spend the time I have with my family out of the hospital, pain-free and as dignified as possible. With hospice care, you usually don't see the providers you were seeing before. You don't continue getting treatment for cancer, for instance. You try not to return to the hospital. You try to get all of your care in your most comfortable location, if that's home or some other facility. With palliative care, we are in addition to all standard care. So we're in addition to your cancer doctor, we're in addition to your surgeons, in addition to your neurologist. We're trying to provide an extra layer of care and support as you get full treatment.
Give me a sense of some of the studies on palliative care. I mean, who can benefit from palliative care? Tell me about Regional 1's designated palliative care section that you're a part of, the director.
Sure, absolutely. First, with the studies, a little over a decade ago, one of the studies that put us on the map was looking at people with the type of lung cancer, and it found that those patients that got regular cancer care plus palliative care lived about a third longer than patients that didn't get palliative care. And so we've seen that in some disease states, people can actually live longer with this type of quality-focused care in addition to standard care. Across most diseases and with most patients, we find benefits in quality of life, less severity of pain, more satisfaction with care, and less instances of depression and anxiety and things that go along with advanced illness. And then the second part of the question, Regional 1, it's been really fun to be part of this process and this journey as we get started here. It began some time ago in talks with Community Foundation of Greater Memphis. They actually were interested in helping us prop up this program, and they have donated a very generous sum of money to get this program going at Regional 1. So we've been hand in hand with them as community partners from the beginning. And at Regional 1, being the trauma center, it's sort of an interesting novel way of doing palliative care. Our focus has been on the trauma patients, trauma ICU especially at first, and now we're expanding into their growing cancer program, and then expanding to the rest of the hospital, even including the neonatal ICU to help sick patients there. With the help from Community Foundation and the funding, we're going to be able to grow the program rather quickly. And our next steps will be to move out of the hospital to the community. So I'll be able to have an outpatient clinic very soon. And then we will even be able to start home-based palliative care that will be part of Regional 1's care network very soon in the next few months.
Dr. Nelson, anything else you want to mention with regards to this this new unit? It sounds like it's a new unit, and anything else you want to let our viewers know about the palliative care center at Regional 1? I
think that it is a new unit. We started July 11th. I think the thing to know is that as we get going in the community, it's going to be open to anybody that feels that they or their family member could use this type of supportive care. Don't be scared if palliative care comes to see you. We really are here to help. I'm glad to be a part of this wonderful community here at Regional One.
Okay, Dr. Jeffrey Nelson with Regional One Care, also professor at UT Health Science Center. Appreciate you educating us about this palliative care unit at Regional One. Thanks very much. Happy New Year to you.
Thank you. I love this opportunity.
Andrew Douglas at the Action News 5 digital desk. There is an amazing medical community in Memphis and the Mid-South. Most of us who have been here for a significant period of time know that. And I want to tell you about a center of innovation at Regional One Health that's really kind of expanding some of the great things that are happening in our medical community here. I'm joined by Alejandra Alvarez, director for the Center of Innovation, at Regional One Health. How are you? Good morning.
Good morning. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Good. So tell me, I've never heard of this, so tell me what the Center of Innovation is.
Absolutely. So we are a division of Regional One Health that was created back in 2016 with the goal of providing a platform that aims to inspire and cultivate new ideas, research, and technology from within the organization, so members within the hospital, as well as the community and entrepreneurs and anyone who's disrupting healthcare through the use of innovation.
That sounds interesting. Sounds very cutting edge, Alejandra. Tell me some of the specifics that, I guess it's been around for a little bit. Tell me some of the specifics that have come out of the center that maybe our audience would know about.
Absolutely. So we run two different programs. One is aimed for our internal members, and that's called the Innovation Lab, where we are building innovation by capturing ideas from our members and seeing if they prove to be valid value propositions. The other is our healthcare startup access incubator, and that's probably something that the community may have heard, and that is an incubator aimed at startups, healthcare startups. And some of those companies or individuals that have participated in that incubator are Cast 21, which is a company that provided or has developed an alternative cast to orthopedic injuries. We've got Sweet Bio, who also is headquartered in Memphis here as well, and they have developed a bioengineered moon product made out of Manuka honey. And most recently, we are currently working with a company called Wellways, and they have developed a thermal sensor device that aims at detecting abnormalities in the breast in hopes of improving early cancer detection. So those are some of the participants in our healthcare access incubator. One of the programs that is aimed at external community members, entrepreneurs in the community, as a way to see how we can contribute to disrupting healthcare, changing healthcare locally as well as beyond.
I love some of these innovations. Thank you so much for sharing them with us, because it's something that everyone can relate to, get behind, and really share in the successes of them. I guess it's one of those things where it really does pinpoint exactly how important some of these innovations are to have in the medical community, not just here in Memphis and the Mid-South, but all over the world, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if we can be a part of that change, we definitely want to be part of that. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so how well do you work with these innovators to say, okay, let's start this, let's do this, we believe in what you're doing? I mean, do they come to you and pitch this idea and then you guys get behind it? How does it exactly work?
Yeah, so for that specific program, we're very involved with the community. So usually it's a referral type of relation or connection that happens at first. And then we work specifically with startup companies that are between what we call the angel stage to Series A stage. And that's basically saying they're very early on in their development process to becoming a startup. They've got an idea for a service or a product, or or they've got a service or product already created and are looking for validation. So one of the key things about our program is that beyond, contributing and helping startups, we are helping ensure their success rate after they've started a company. And we do that through validation. So our incubator brings them in to say, hey, does this product or service actually provide the value that we intended when we developed it? And so we put together a scope of work document that says, here's what the company needs in terms of validation, right? Is this the right design of the product? Is this the right size of the product? Is this the right product, period, or service? And then how should I price it? Is there anything that I should know that could inform my prototype design or my go-to market strategy? And so at the end of the program, we hope that through that experience and that incubation, their chances at success are greater because they had the opportunity to validate. Typically, a lot of startups don't get that chance. And if they do, it's usually, after they've spent a lot of money, a lot of time. And one of the things that we know startups, are limited in is initial funding. And so if we can help them get to that yes or no question sooner and have an opportunity to tweak their product as they're going through the process, their chance at success once they do enter the market grows.
It's fascinating. It really is. I like hearing this process, Alejandra. Tell me, how do you find these companies to work with? Do they initially make the first suggestion, or do they contact you? Do you contact them? Is it a little bit of both?
It's a little bit of both. Usually, they can contact us directly through our website, but we also do a lot of engagement activities throughout the community, like seminars, conferences, workshops, and not just in Memphis. We've traveled throughout the state of Tennessee, and through, again, referrals of relationships that we have established, we have been able to also reach companies that are outside of Tennessee. For example, Cast 21 is a company that is actually headquartered in Chicago, but through a lot of the medical and startup support ecosystem that exists in Memphis, they were able to come here and engage with us. And so, again, it's a combination of either you found us directly through our site or in searching for something like this, or through one of our engagement activities that we perform.
This kind of center of innovation at Regional One, is it something that you see at every hospital? Is it something that you see across every region? Because it sounds fantastic. It sounds like most hospitals, most big, large hospitals should have this type of innovation center, or is this just unique to Regional One?
So I think the way that we've designed our program and is unique, is very unique. I will say that there are centers for innovation throughout the country. You can pretty much execute that in different ways. There's a lot of technology transfer efforts that occur most often than the traditional in a traditional way in terms of how people engage with innovation. But there's innovation centers throughout the country. The programmatic efforts that they perform are a little bit different. They vary depending on what kind of engagement they want to perform. Technology transfer offices are very common as well. But what I would say about us is that our program is specifically designed to sort of be more of an open door system versus, we are in a very regulated environment or industry. And so we've been able to put together a unique program that not only accounts for all of the regulation and things that we have to abide by, but also still allow the individual to come in and still allow the individual to incubate and learn and from that inspire new ideas, research, and technology.
All right. So where can we go? If someone's watching this, they want to learn more about the Center of Innovation, where should they go?
So they can visit our website. We are at www.innovation.regional1health.org to learn a lot more. There's contact information there if they wanted to reach out directly to me or any one of our team members.
Alejandra, is there anything else you want to mention that we haven't talked about yet?
I think I want to say, this is a very selfish statement, but basically, this program, and as well as the Memphis ecosystem, we have a very excellent ecosystem that supports entrepreneurs, that supports innovators, specifically those in healthcare. And I think that is something to be said about Memphis. And we're very proud of our program. We're very proud of our city, and to be able to bring this forward through Regional One Health, is even better. Our hospital system is sort of at the core of the community. We're a safety net hospital. We provide care to the majority of our community members. So to invest in these types of activities and programs is something to be said about us and about our city. So we thank you for the opportunity to share that message.
Well, we thank you for all your hard work. We appreciate everything that you're doing at the Center of Innovation, and congratulations on the success, because not only are you successful there, Alejandra Alvarez, but you're successful and your success is making us all proud here across Memphis and the Mid-South. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay, according to the National Institutes of Health, more than 5.6 million American adults vape using an electronic device to inhale nicotine and flavored vapors. That doesn't include the millions of high school and middle school teens that are out there. I want to show you now how researchers are conducting a clinical trial that could help people quit and live their best life. Check it out.
Michael Werner was a college student when he started vaping almost every hour.
I would sometimes hit it in the middle of the night if I happened to wake up.
He found himself quickly addicted to nicotine, but hated how vaping made him feel.
It makes it hard to really fully be in the moment unless you're using your device in that moment.
Dr. Nancy Rigotti is the director of the Tobacco Research and Treatment Unit at Mass General Hospital. After years of tobacco use being on the decline, 1 in 10 young adults ages 18 to 24 now vape.
Some of them are able to quit, but a lot of them are having trouble.
Dr. Rigotti and her colleagues use text messaging, behavior counseling, and medications to help young adults who want to quit nicotine. And now they're testing a medicine called Cetirizine, made from a plant by the same name.
The drug itself is very similar to one of our smoking cessation medicines that's called varenicline or Chantix. And so it has a similar effect, but it has fewer side effects is what we're seeing.
Cetirizine is thought to block the rush from nicotine and reduce withdrawal symptoms. Michael Werner finally quit by weaning himself from his vape. He works now as a clinical research coordinator, helping others kick the habit.
I've spoken with a lot of folks who are in recovery from drugs and alcohol, and they will tell me time and time again, this is the hardest drug to quit.
Dr. Rigotti says Cetirizine has been tested in cigarette smokers in a series of trials showing it is effective in helping quit nicotine. For that reason, she says the drug may be closer to FDA approval. She says the side effects include some nausea, headaches, vivid dreams, but most people who have taken it have tolerated it. Dr. Rigotti says the drug has been available in Eastern Europe for years, but not in the U.S. With Ways to Live Your Best Life, I'm Andrew Douglas, Action News 5. Okay, so that was a report I did about Americans adults being addicted to vaping and e-cigarettes, that sort of thing. We didn't even touch on the youth epidemic that still is getting worse. It is considered a serious public health threat. In fact, let me give you this number. 2022, okay, more than 2.5 million middle school and high school children reported e-cigarette use. 2.5 million, a higher number than in 2021. So what can be done to address all this? Let's talk about the youth vaping epidemic right now. I got two ladies who specialize in this problem, this epidemic, Amy Taylor, Sabrina Taylor. Let's talk about this problem, this epidemic. Let's identify it. Amy, let's start with you. How did we get to this point?
Thank you for having us. This continues to be a serious public health issue. As you said in the opening, 2.5 million high school and middle school students are vaping. What's of real concern is that about half of the high school students who are vaping are doing so on a near daily basis. It's a big issue.
Sabrina, what about you?
Not sure I
Where do you stand in all this?
Well, actually, I work at a middle school. Again, thank you for having us. But working at a middle school, The epidemic is just as real. It's impacting our students mentally, socially, and also academically. So it is a real issue.
You know, I have two teenagers, and they're older teenagers. One's 18, one 19. And when they were in middle school, they told me, and even in high school, I have a senior right now, they know specific bathrooms where students go during classes and switch. And they know bathrooms where people use the vape because they can smell, you know, some of the sweet flavors, cotton candy, creme brulee, that sort of thing. It is an awful situation. It really just, my heart sinks every time I hear about it. What can we do when it comes to education? Amy, let's start with you. What resources are out there that we can turn this trend, this tide?
Yeah, I have 3 teenagers as well, and I've heard the exact same things. What we do know is that when young people have the facts, they're going to feel empowered and they're going to make informed decisions, which is why we are so excited about our free digital curriculum that's available to every school in the country. It's called Vaping Know the Truth, and it provides young people with the facts about how nicotine is dangerous for the developing brain. It talks about how vaping can impact your mental health. It can make you feel more anxious and depressed, which is certainly important as our youth are facing a mental health crisis right now. And lastly, for those young people who are vaping, we provide access to a free text-based program called This Is Quitting, which has helped more than 500,000 adolescents and young adults quit.
Sabrina, I know as a middle school teacher, you see this stuff firsthand, but I understand that you've been part of this curriculum, the Vaping Know the Truth curriculum. Tell me what kind of impact that has had with some of your students.
Thank you for that question. It's had a positive impact with my students because the students, when they know the facts, they do become more empowered, and they actually are coming to me with the curiosity and like, I really didn't notice about vaping. I really like Vaping Know the Truth because it's giving me information I didn't know about. So the impact is positive. Again, I believe information is positive. So I really am grateful for this resource. Vaping Know the Truth by the Truth Initiative is having a positive impact on my students.
For people that aren't familiar or that aren't familiar with that curriculum, can you briefly tell us about it?
Absolutely. So it is a 4-module program, completely digital, and it is a peer-led discussion. We know that young people are going to take the messages better from other young people. And so our curriculum is not judgy. It's not finger wagging. It really is about providing young people with the information and the tools to give them, to help them make informed choices. And it's also a curriculum that's very easy for teachers to use. They introduce the topic and they let young people engage with it on their own time.
Okay, before we let you go, ladies, I just want to ask, and we'll start with you, Sabrina. Tell me where we can go when it comes to more information, and what would you say to other teachers out there that are perhaps watching this?
Well, just reiterating again, thank you for having us. I went through EverFi, and it's provided by the Truth Initiative. Vaping Know the Truth, but I do know that Amy has more additional information and resources that can really help teachers, because when you have a free resource, it is just so impactful that you have it readily available for our students to engage in that curriculum to get the facts.
We've had more than 600,000 high school students and middle school students use the curriculum so far. And to get more information about Vaping Know the Truth and our text-based quit program called This Is Quitting, go to truthinitiative.org.
Okay, ladies, well, listen, I can't thank you enough for talking about this very serious, very important issue. Amy Taylor and Sabrina Taylor, thanks very much helping us get the word out. We appreciate you, and good luck helping get the word out throughout the year in 2023. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning. We have a cold front that is now pushed east of us. You probably felt that that temperature dropping as that cold air moved in yesterday behind the front. Well, now we're dry, although there could be a few flurries falling at any point of the day. Since we have clouds in place, that means that we have enough moisture from the middle to lower portions of the atmosphere for us to possibly get flurries and maybe even some sleet. 10 o'clock in the morning, First Alert Futurecast showing clearing in eastern Arkansas, clouds in West Tennessee, North Mississippi. If we did see any snow or sleet, it'd probably be later in the day by 3 o'clock here. Notice temperatures above freezing this whole time, so anything that falls is not going to stick. But there could be some sleet over towards areas like Corinth and Ashland. Possibility for a snow-sleet mixture. The pink would be the sleet. This bluish purpley color here would be the snow at 5:30. Some of that in Ashland and Fayette County. Spots like Selmer, Corinth, Brownsville getting sleet. We may also see some of this in Shelby County, especially areas like Collierville and Arlington, Lakeland. So eastern portions of Shelby County would have the best bet for getting any of that. And it doesn't last long. By 9 o'clock tonight, the moisture moves east as that system continues to push off towards the Atlantic. We'll no longer have any of that left over by 9 or 10 o'clock tonight. The rest of the evening is dry and even clouds clear out. It'll feel chilly today. We'll have actual temperatures around 40 degrees. That's why none of that's going to stick to the ground. But because of the winds, it feels a lot colder. It'll feel like the 20s all morning. We'll feel like 33 at 3 o'clock and still feeling like the lower 30s tonight. Now, as far as your wind gusts go, that's what's making it feel so much colder. We have wind gusts 20 to 25 miles per hour this morning, probably around 20 miles per hour with those northwest winds through 6 o'clock. After that, winds will start to die down. So wind chills won't be a huge factor if you have any Friday night plans after around 7 o'clock tonight. The high today, as I mentioned, is 40 degrees. Low temperatures tonight, though, will be back down to the upper 20s. And like I said, you could see some light snow or some sleet before 9 o'clock. After that, we'll be dry with a clear sky. Let's look at these temperatures for the weekend. 47 degrees on Saturday. And then on Sunday, a little bit warmer, high of 57. Not bad with sunshine in place both days this weekend. If you want to check that weekend forecast or get more details on that First Alert Futurecast with the snow and sleet chance that I was talking about, you can see that always on our First Alert weather app. Search for WMC and you can download that one for free. Our First Alert 7-day forecast showing a nice warming trend. Upper 50s Sunday. We're at 62 degrees on Monday. I have a first alert to some rain in the forecast on Monday. Most of that will be late in the day, late afternoon into the evening. Tuesday we dry out again. We're in the mid 60s, near 70 degrees on Wednesday, but a cold front moves through Wednesday. That's going to bring a chance for some thunderstorms, some which might be severe, something for us to monitor. And then by Thursday, behind the front, we're back down to the 50s.
Okay, switching gears right now, let's talk about the Varsity Blues scandal. Do you remember what we're talking about here? This is a guy by the name of Rick Singer. He just was sentenced to 42 months in jail because he was trying to get in people who paid him into schools pretending to be either an athlete or pretending to have high scores in order to pass entrance exams and to be accepted into some of these high-profile schools. Well, again, he is sentenced to 42 months in prison. How did the scandal affect testing and college admissions? Many people want to know. And how does this case highlight how much competition there is for selective colleges, the advantages of the wealthy, and how the average student can still compete with great grades and great test scores? We're going to bring in our expert in all this. David Blobom is a nationally recognized expert in the entrance exam and college admissions industry, and he is a friend of ours because we've been talking about him for months before he became nationally known, back when he was, certainly known with us. David, it's always good to see you. Happy New Year. How are things?
I'm doing great. Happy New Year.
So in light of the Varsity Blues scandal and sentencing, how does testing and college admissions change, if at all, David?
Yeah, so for all the media sensation, it's kind of interesting to see that testing and college admissions didn't really change much at all. I mean, there were some tweaks to how students could take the test with accommodations, but basically no changes because this was a very small number of applicants out of millions of applicants. But it certainly highlighted the lengths that wealthy families will go to get their kids into top-ranked colleges. And so for me, what was really interesting is that it highlighted that the SAT and ACT, they're barriers for all students, wealthy students, any student. And so these wealthy families, they couldn't just buy higher SAT and ACT scores through test prep because their kids would still have to learn the grammar, the rhetorical skills, the mathematics, reading. And so they paid a proctor to take the test for them and broke the law. So I think it's important to realize that the SAT and ACT are an equalizing barrier, that all students can do better on the tests, but all students, wealthy or not, they have to learn the content if they're going to get a higher score.
Then why is there such a push to do away with these college admissions tests that we see, the ACT, SAT?
Yeah, so if you look at average SAT and ACT scores and you plot those scores by wealth, you see very clearly that the higher income families, their kids on average have higher SAT and ACT scores. So that paints the picture that SAT and ACT scores, they don't reflect academic content and knowledge and skills, but it looks like it's a reflection of wealth. But really what's happening there is, unfortunately, because of inequality in the US, there is unequal access to quality education. So it's because those wealthy families have better access to good education for their kids that their kids on average do better on tests of academic education. But that doesn't mean that the disadvantaged students, that some of them don't rise above, get great educations and do a lot of prep on their own and get great scores. They can still compete. And that also, just like Varsity Blues illustrates, it doesn't mean that the wealthy automatically have higher SAT and ACT scores. They still have to have the knowledge to do well on those exams as well.
All right, let's talk about those exams. Many of our viewers here perhaps have high school students, and the timeline for juniors when it comes to taking the SAT and the ACT. Let's go over that, and then how many times they should take it, when do they need to be finished with testing, and how they can improve their scores. Let's talk about those things.
Yeah, so I would encourage all students to apply early action to all their top schools and early decision to their very top school, because applying early decision gives you a little bit of a boost in the admissions process. So most of those early application deadlines are November 1st of a student's senior year. So students should try and finish by then. So then we can kind of walk back the timeline from there. So if a student is a 10th grader right now, or I'm sorry, an 11th grader right now, they can still take the March, May, June, August, and October SAT exams and still get their results before the early application deadlines. For the ACT, they can take the February, April, June, July, September, and October exams. So still lots of exams coming up. A lot of families are, it used to be 10 years ago, you really didn't want to take the test multiple times because all of your results would be reported to most colleges. Now, most colleges only see your highest section scores from any exams. You only need to report the test dates that you want to report to colleges. And ACT actually allows you to delete exams for free at any time. So now students can even take the real test as practice. And the real test is the best possible practice. And you don't even need to show those results unless you do well. So you can take the test as long as you're continuing to go up on it and until you hit your score goal if you want.
Let me ask you this, because I know that essays are a component with some of those tests, the ACT and the SAT, and there's something called ChatGPT. What is that?
This is mind-blowing. It's going to change so many industries, and already has. One of the ways that it's changed college application essays is that it can write better application essays than about 75% of high school students. So the outputs that it gives are only as good as the inputs. So you can say, write an essay on why I want to go to Tulane University and make it 500 words. And it'll do that, but it'll be very general about, Tulane, how diverse New Orleans is, etc. But if you give it very specific inputs, like when I was 5 years old, I almost drowned. I was saved by paramedics. Since then, I realized life is a gift. I want to be an emergency room doctor eventually. Write a 500-word essay about that and why I want to go to Tulane. And it will write out in 3 seconds a fantastic essay for you. A very good writer will still be able to write better than it, but it's better than most high school students. The other way that high school students are already using it for their college application essays is they'll write their own essay, copy and paste it into ChatGPT and say, write this better. And it'll rewrite it, make it all grammatically correct, make it clearer, more concise. And I've seen with my own students that I would say for the average high school student, it maybe doubles the quality of their essays after it rewrites it for them.
That is crazy to me. Wow, yeah. What a tool. I would think that would be almost cheating a little bit. Wow. What do you think?
And yes, it gets into much larger equity issues. I mean, is it cheating? I think so. But then you also have heads of state universities like John Boeckenstedt. He's the head of enrollment for Oregon State University. He encourages students to employ essay editors that not only do, check your spelling and your punctuation, but also your voice, tell you what you should be writing about or not writing about. So it's very difficult that the wealthy actually have access to a lot of essay editing that editing is very ambiguous already. So the irony behind ChatGPT is it actually gives all students access to a good essay editor. Now, I think that they should make sure that essays from the wealthy or the not wealthy, everyone is authentic essays. But currently they don't have a way to do that because essays are not proctored. So students were already making up the content of their essays, or the essays were being written by other people. So there were already lots of problems surrounding authenticity. This just highlights them in a big way because every student's essay is potentially inauthentic now. So they really need to figure out a solution to this.
Yeah, it sounds like it to me. My goodness. Wow. Okay. So the SAT, I understand, is going through a lot of changes here, shorter, digitally adaptive next year. What should students and parents know about it?
So for any 10th graders, the first thing they need to know is it's changing. So that's helpful that you even told them that because most don't know. So 10th graders in 11th grade, so this next year when they're juniors, the SAT is going to radically change in the middle of their junior year. So if they're preparing for the current SAT, the runway ends December of this year, 2023. The paper SAT will never be there again. So then if they don't finish by then, they're going to be taking the digital SAT in March of 2024. Now, there's not a lot of practice tests. There's only 4 practice tests for the new digital test. So if students don't finish with the current SAT, or they don't think they can finish with the current SAT by December, they're probably better off going with the ACT because that test is not changing next year and hasn't substantially changed for over 20 years.
And let's talk a little bit about, I know we've talked about this a bunch in the past, but let's refresh everybody's memory about which test would be better for their child, the SAT and the ACT, how to determine that, and how to submit those scores to prospective universities.
Absolutely. So the first thing that students need to do is figure out which test fits them best. So the ACT, it's more straightforward, but it rushes you more. The SAT, it's more abstract and tricky, but you have more time per question. So that might fit one student better than another. So students should first just Google official past SAT, official past ACT. That'll take them to the SAT and ACT websites where they'll take an official exam. They should print those out, take both of them, and see which one they do better on. And there are concordance tables. You can just Google SAT and ACT concordance table to compare your scores on both. So whichever test is better, students should pick that. And then it's a golden age of information. So there's a million ways they can prep. All students can prep for free through the Khan Academy online. Any student who gets to take the ACT for free, which is 20% of students are on fee waivers, which means they can take the ACT for free 4 times, and they get free online prep through the ACT. But other resources are the prep books that are out. Those are great for independent study. There's also classes, private tutoring, and the National Test Prep Association. They have a member directory, so a vetted list of companies around the nation that can provide great test prep if the student wants those classes or private tutoring, just for more accountability and more instruction.
David, very informative as always. Anything else you want to mention before we let you go about the ACT, the SAT, the admission scandal, how things are evolving and changing?
I would just encourage students to know that they can gain an advantage in the admissions process and gain an advantage in getting scholarships and more merit aid if they have good SAT and ACT scores. And that's not limited to wealthy students. That's just anyone who puts in the time to learn this content, which is available to all.
Great advice. David Blobaum, Director of Outreach, National Prep Association. Always appreciate your informative interviews here in the Action News 5 Digital Desk. Thanks very much and Happy New Year.
Thanks so much. You too.
When we talk about 2023, okay, so New Year's resolutions, a lot of them have to deal with fitness and exercise or money. And a new Fidelity study reveals that 2023 is the year of something called living sensibly as people plan for uncertain times. Let's talk more about this with Stacy Watson. She's Senior VP of Life Events Planning at Fidelity Investments. Welcome back to the Digital Desk, Stacy. How are you this morning?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you being here. So what did Fidelity study? What did this study reveal about Americans' top financial concerns for 2023?
Well, we found that record high inflation was the top financial setback for 2022, and it remains the top concern for 2023. And economic uncertainty is also really high on the list as well. I would say Americans are proceeding with caution, and they're making practical financial resolutions. In fact, for the first time in the 14 years that we've been doing this study, we're seeing that more people are saving for the short term than the long term. But the key really is to find a balance between the here and now and longer term goals like college or buying a home, because after all, like, pursuing our dreams really is what life is all about.
Stacy, in that study, did it reveal any reasons why people are so concerned about the 2023 outlook? I mean, just thinking about it, you know, raging inflation, I mean, sky high prices that we haven't seen in 4 decades. I mean, I would think that those would be some of the contributing factors.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what's top of mind for Americans. It's inflation, it's rising prices, and it's the economic uncertainty, and they're seeing it in their daily lives. So that's what's giving them concern. That's what's making them proceed with caution and really figure out how to be practical about how they're saving and what they're spending their money on.
Okay, so with the inflation, the rising prices, perhaps some debt that people are going into, how are people and what are the best ways people are trying to achieve financial success in 2023?
Well, if you can swing it, saving more and paying down debt, even in small amounts, can have a big impact on not only your financial well-being, but also your emotional well-being. So here's a few tips. First, take a look at your spending. Are there subscriptions that you don't use or channels that you don't watch? You don't have to give up all your luxuries. You can keep the ones that bring you joy. And then secondly, pay a little bit more on your monthly credit card bill than the minimum, because adding just a little bit to that monthly payment, you can watch your debt go down in a fraction of the time. And then finally, look around for lower interest rates. It's really hard to dig out when interest keeps piling up. And there are a lot of good offers for low interest loans or balance transfers.
Yeah, those are all great pieces of advice, Stacey. What about some resources out there to help people as they look to reach their financial goals in 2023?
Well, having a financial plan can really give you this sense of control, even when the rest of the world feels like it's out of control. And so we have a wealth of resources that can help no matter what life throws at you, whether you're navigating a job change or you're going through a divorce, or maybe you're caring for an aging loved one. And we also have in January is Financial Wellness Month. And at Fidelity, we are featuring daily tips and interactive tools and special events, virtual special events that are all focused on financial well-being. And you can find all of that at fidelity.com/financial wellness.
Okay, Stacey Watson, Senior VP of Life Events Planning at Fidelity Investments. We appreciate your insight this morning. Thank you so much. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Thanks for having me.
There is a new study out there that really kind of shows the benefits of walking. No surprise, 10,000 steps a day. So many people have those trackers. They try to get those 10,000 steps a day. It can reduce the risk of cancer, according to this new study, heart disease, and early death. And to add to that, lowering the risk of dementia by 50%. And if you can't make 10,000 steps, walking just less than half of that lowers the risk of dementia by 25%. Amazing stuff from this new study out there. Let's bring in Dr. Alicia Jones to explain more of the benefits of walking. Dr. Jones, great to see you again. Let's talk about this, because we have this new study out here, and we always hear, okay, you got to get 10,000 steps a day and all this stuff. But you don't even need to get 10,000 steps in order to really kind of benefit from walking, right?
Right, that's true. And that's exactly what, this study just was able to prove, even like, as you said, getting even less than half of that can be proved to be quite beneficial for people.
So let's talk about some of the common benefits.
Mm-hmm. So some of them you touched on, but overall, walking is going to be good just for general health, but it can help lower blood pressure, lower blood sugar, lower cholesterol. It can certainly help with an energy boost, or even help people sleep better at night.
My wife and I, we've seen something where if you walk after dinner, you just walk for a little bit after dinner, maybe 30 minutes or so, it dramatically reduces blood sugar levels and does a number on all kinds of health benefits.
Absolutely.
What do you recommend that to your patients, that you just kind of walk 30 minutes a day at least?
I do. And, I even say, especially for those that have not been physically active for a very long time, you can start out with half of that, or start out with 20 minutes. And it doesn't have to be, at this race-like pace. You want to do something that, yes, is going to be able to get the blood flowing, get your heart pumping, but you want to be able to sustain that, at a safe pace. For an extended period of time. And you're going to just have to work your way up to being able to go for 30 minutes or go for an hour or an hour and a half, depending on what the goal is.
Something I found interesting, Dr. Jones, about this study was talking about how walking influences the risk of dementia. Can you comment a little bit about that? Because dementia is something that a lot of older people unfortunately come down with, and a lot of times it'll turn into Alzheimer's, and it's just a mess.
Right. So, dementia is an illness that can affect, right now it affects over 55 million people worldwide, but, dementia is this umbrella term, right? Kind of similar to heart disease. So Alzheimer's disease is what falls underneath that umbrella. It's the leading cause of dementia. And what this study, found was just that, with walking, you can certainly reduce your risk of developing dementia. And it doesn't have to be long amounts of walking. It doesn't have to be, this strenuous amount of walking, but it's something that, is easily obtainable, something that's easily obtainable for people to do. And they found that it was able to, reduce their risk by 50% if they were able to keep it up for, I believe it said about 7 years.
That's incredible. And, that's one of my worries. I mean, my dad has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and so we're, my family's taking care of him. And so, I've been reading a ton about, that disease, and anything that can help brain and cognitive functions, I'm all for. And it just sounds like, if you take care of yourself and you just keep moving, no matter what it is, even if it's just walking, is so beneficial. And it looks like it's even more beneficial. Well, I guess women are more common to come down with dementia, so it would help them more, right?
Right. Yes. No, dementia is something that affects women more so than it does men. But yes, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Just get up and start moving. That's going to be the number one thing that you can do. But, in addition to moving, you also have to remember, okay, there's a lifestyle in terms of, dietary and social habits that go along with that. So you want to make sure that you're eating the right foods, you're getting enough sleep. In terms of alcohol consumption, there's moderate to minimal alcohol consumption, and of course, no smoking. All of those things coupled together with walking, will significantly reduce the risk of developing dementia.
What are some of the other ways that we can keep our brain sharp? Because, again, a lot of people, worried about, those kind of cognitive functions.
Mm-hmm. I often encourage a lot of my patients to get into stimulating brain games. Some of them like to do Sudokus. And it was one of the puzzles that my grandmother loved to do was those type of puzzles, but crossword puzzles, any type of brain stimulation that's going to cause you that requires problem solving or puzzle solving. Any of those things are going to be good to do. But just, social interaction is also good for your mental health as well. So getting involved with different organizations or community groups or just volunteering, that can be quite helpful.
So when I'm on my phone, sometimes, we kind of get bored. We'll play a game or whatever, and I'll get these advertisements for these games. Oh, improve your brain activity. Be a genius if you download this game right now. And I'm like, is this for real? I mean, are there certain games that we can play on our phone that actually will help our cognitive function, or is this just, a scam?
No, I mean, some of it, of course, yes, I'm sure you'd have to take with a grain of salt. But, if you get, into the App Store, for example, and you are searching for puzzle games or brain stimulating games, I mean, you can certainly look at the reviews of what was, written about that particular app or that particular game. And that may help kind of better guide your decision making in terms of which one you decide to add onto your phone.
Yeah, because it's like, hey, be the next Einstein, download this game. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to. Okay, so is there anything else you'd like to mention with regards to this new study, walking benefits and cognitive function, dementia, that sort of thing?
I just want to, again, reiterate that, you don't have to start at, okay, today I'm going to get out, I'm going to walk 10,000 steps. I mean, yes, that's the ultimate goal essentially, but, just start off where you can and work your way up. And there's nothing wrong with taking your time to work your way up. I also encourage my patients, if you don't feel that it's, a safe place to walk because it's a busy area where you're living, then, you can always go into the mall and walk around in the mall for an extended period of time. And that's still getting steps in. That still counts. You just want to make sure that hopefully, if you're able to, you can track your steps so you know how many that you're taking in a day, but that you're most importantly getting your heart rate up and you're feeling like you're working towards that goal.
Walking inside a mall sounds really good on a day where there's triple-digit heat today.
That's also true.
Yeah, that's great. Dr. Alicia Jones, always enjoy our conversations. Thanks for keeping it real with us and explaining everything. Have a great day.
Thank you, you too.
Good morning. We have a cold front that is now pushed east of us. You probably felt that that temperature dropping as that cold air moved in yesterday behind the front. Well, now we're dry, although there could be a few flurries falling at any point of the day. Since we have clouds in place, that means that we have enough moisture from the middle to lower portions of the atmosphere for us to possibly get flurries and maybe even some sleet. 10 o'clock in the morning, First Alert Futurecast showing clearing in eastern Arkansas, clouds in West Tennessee, North Mississippi. If we did see any snow or sleet, it'd probably be later in the day by 3 o'clock here. Notice temperatures above freezing this whole time, so anything that falls is not going to stick. But there could be some sleet over towards areas like Corinth and Ashland. Possibility for a snow-sleet mixture. The pink would be the sleet. This bluish purpley color here would be the snow at 5:30. Some of that in Ashland and Fayette County. Spots like Selmer, Corinth, Brownsville getting sleet. We may also see some of this in Shelby County, especially areas like Collierville and Arlington, Lakeland. So eastern portions of Shelby County would have the best bet for getting any of that. And it doesn't last long. By 9 o'clock tonight, the moisture moves east as that system continues to push off towards the Atlantic. We'll no longer have any of that left over by 9 or 10 o'clock tonight. The rest of the evening is dry and even clouds clear out. It'll feel chilly today. We'll have actual temperatures around 40 degrees. That's why none of that's going to stick to the ground. But because of the winds, it feels a lot colder. It'll feel like the 20s all morning. We'll feel like 33 at 3 o'clock and still feeling like the lower 30s tonight. Now, as far as your wind gusts go, that's what's making it feel so much colder. We have wind gusts 20 to 25 miles per hour this morning, probably around 20 miles per hour with those northwest winds through 6 o'clock. After that, winds will start to die down. So wind chills won't be a huge factor if you have any Friday night plans after around 7 o'clock tonight. The high today, as I mentioned, is 40 degrees. Low temperatures tonight, though, will be back down to the upper 20s. And like I said, you could see some light snow or some sleet before 9 o'clock. After that, we'll be dry with a clear sky. Let's look at these temperatures for the weekend. 47 degrees on Saturday. And then on Sunday, a little bit warmer, high of 57. Not bad with sunshine in place both days this weekend. If you want to check that weekend forecast or get more details on that First Alert Futurecast with the snow and sleet chance that I was talking about, you can see that always on our First Alert weather app. Search for WMC and you can download that one for free. Our First Alert 7-day forecast showing a nice warming trend. Upper 50s Sunday. We're at 62 degrees on Monday. I have a first alert to some rain in the forecast on Monday. Most of that will be late in the day, late afternoon into the evening. Tuesday we dry out again. We're in the mid 60s, near 70 degrees on Wednesday, but a cold front moves through Wednesday. That's going to bring a chance for some thunderstorms, some which might be severe, something for us to monitor. And then by Thursday, behind the front, we're back down to the 50s.
Well, our hearts are heavy this morning as we learn and are still reeling from the news that Lisa Marie Presley, Elvis's only child, died last night at the age of 54. Certainly something that shocked so many people all across the country, all across the world, and here in the Mid-South. Action News 5's Joyce Peterson has more on what happened.
Lisa Marie Presley talking with fans, honoring her father's legacy less than 1 week ago at Graceland. Elvis's only child hadn't been seen much in the last 2 years. Her son Benjamin's 2020 suicide took a heavy toll on her heart and health. But the success of the movie Elvis seemed to energize Lisa Marie. She attended the Golden Globes Tuesday night with mother Priscilla Presley and lead actor Austin Butler, crying when he picked up the Best Actor award. The LA County Sheriff's Office told Action News 5 deputies responded to a report of a woman not breathing, suffering from cardiac arrest, 10:42 a.m. Thursday. Paramedics performed CPR and rushed Lisa Marie to the hospital. Her mother tweeting, "We feel the prayers from around the world and ask for privacy during this time." 8 p.m. Thursday night, Lisa Marie was gone.
Memphis needs to have some love again.
Lisa Marie Presley has 3 surviving children, 33-year-old daughter Riley and 13-year-old twins Findley and Harper.
I'm just really proud that I could be here.
She followed in her famous father's footsteps, becoming a singer, releasing Storm and Grace in 2012. She owns the Graceland Mansion and all of Elvis's costumes, making it all available to the public through Elvis Presley Enterprises. Graceland recently announced as the most Instagrammable tourist destination in all of Tennessee. Kevin Kane, head of Memphis Tourism, telling us tonight, Memphis and the entire local tourism industry extend our sympathies to the Presley family on the passing of Lisa Marie, Elvis and Priscilla's adoring daughter. We celebrated what would have been her father's 88th birthday just a few short days ago at Graceland, and it is now hard to imagine that was her last trip home to Memphis and her beloved Graceland. Fans at Graceland hearing the news simply stunned.
We just got off the Lisa Marie plane, and there was a woman from Europe who said, "Did you hear Lisa Marie died?" I got chills because that's how her father passed, and we just learned that on our tour. To have it happen today is very sad for me and for my husband, for sure. I was calling my brother, telling him, I just wish lots of prayers for her family.
That was our Joyce Peterson reporting there. There's no word yet if Lisa Marie will be laid to rest with her father and her son at Graceland. Here's another, so many comments coming in from Hollywood, from around the world, from various dignitaries. Memphis, certainly, this one is coming from Priscilla. Priscilla Presley family shocked, devastated by the tragic death of Lisa Marie. They are profoundly grateful for the support, the love and prayers of everyone, asking for privacy during this very difficult time. And so here's another one from Memphis Congressman Steve Cohen. I remember 1977 when Elvis died and how I was affected. When he died, it was personal because we'd grown up with him. This is a sad day for Elvis fans, including myself. She will always, this is from Memphis Mayor Jim Strickland, she will always be beloved in Memphis, and my thoughts and prayers are with Priscilla and the Presley family. During this difficult time, I share my condolences with everyone who knew and loved Lisa Marie. Certainly something that we're thinking about here on Action News 5. Meanwhile, there is a visitation that'll be held today to celebrate the life of Lola Mitchell, also known as Memphis rapper Gangsta Boo. It'll be at Rail Gardens starting at 7 o'clock tonight. Funeral services will be held tomorrow from 12 to 1:30 at Brown Baptist Church in South Haven. Gangsta Boo died on New Year's Day at the age of 43. Democrats in Tennessee, in the Tennessee House, want new investments. Following a report from the Tennessee Commission on Children and Youth, the report says that Tennessee is the worst state in the country when it comes to foster care and gives an assessment of health, mental health, economic stability, education outcomes, child welfare, and youth justices. The lawmakers say the Department of Children's Services has struggled for years to build its roster of foster families amid staffing shortages resulting in low pay, insufferable working conditions, and mismanagement.
At the end of the day, we're not talking about, economic development or something else. This directly impacts the lives of our future. And if we don't get this right now, it sends a strong message to the state about.
You can read the full report on our story on actionnews5.com. One Mississippi State Senator wants to make it illegal for parents to register their children for school systems outside the district. Action News 5's Stephanie Douglas has more on that.
With an enrollment of more than 30,000 students, DeSoto County Schools is the largest district in Mississippi. However, in a recently drafted bill, State Senator Mike McClendon wants to control the crowd and prevent parents from boundary hopping.
You have to be a resident of DeSoto County to go to those schools.
McClendon says if parents register their children under a false address, the proposed bill would have violators face a misdemeanor and a $500 fine, a maximum of 6 months in prison, and expulsion from the school.
We have fantastic schools. So why are we going to burden our system? That's what we're trying to give some relief to our teachers, as well as doing what's right by the taxpayers.
DeSoto County Superintendent and school board members say they trust local legislators will make decisions that are in the best interest of DeSoto County students, school employees, and residents. In a statement, district officials say in part it is important that taxpayer dollars are spent on DeSoto County residents and that teacher-pupil ratios are not adversely affected by out-of-district residents. Although McLendon hopes to alleviate an unfair burden on teachers and taxpayers, some parents oppose of his bill.
I think paying maybe a private school fee if they come to a different school, fill out an application and be able to come to the school is a good thing.
Let's talk about the A-list entertainment and fine arts that are coming to Senatobia, Mississippi. After 4 years, $30 million of investment, Northwest Mississippi Community College cut the ribbon for their new Performing Arts Center, and it's going to provide more than just art education for students. Here's Parker King.
Echo! Yep. This is a big auditorium, 1,203 seats to be exact, not to mention the tens of thousands of additional square feet in learning, dance, and instrumental space for the students here at Northwest Community College and the A-listers who will be performing here. To name a few for the inaugural season, Jay Leno, Bobby Rush, and Kristen Chenoweth will be gracing the stage here. Concerts, local performances, and movie series will also be included to make this a year-round attraction for the area. Northwest leaders say a facility like this sets them apart from others in the region, and what they'll be able to provide to students will be invaluable if their goal one day is the fine arts.
Community college gives those students the affordability, but they're getting world-class venues, equipment, instruction, and talent coming in that they'll have master class opportunities. They're going to be able to work backstage. They're going to be able to work out in the lobby. You're getting unbelievable, awesome experience at an affordable community college level.
The center is being named the Heindel Center for the Performing Arts, named after current Northwest president, Dr. Michael Heindel. We'll have everything you need to know about the upcoming season and some of those A-listers I mentioned. Just head on over to our website, actionnews5.com, or the Action News 5 app, and look for this story. For now, in Senatobia, Parker King, Action News 5.
Amanda Hansen back here at the Action News 5 digital desk. Now, we really want to switch gears here and dive in and help to share some information about resources and programs that are available to those that are formerly incarcerated to be able to survive inflation, the recession. We're all feeling the impacts of it. And so it's been so difficult, especially for those that are coming out of the prison system and trying to reintegrate back into society. So joining me now to talk more about some of those resources and just some of the struggles that those who are formerly incarcerated are dealing with. This is Stacy Brooks. She is with a nonprofit out of Tennessee called Persevere, and she's joining us this morning. Stacy, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
I'm doing really good. I'm excited to be talking to you this morning and talking more about it because I feel like this is such an important topic to dive into because recidivism, you don't want it to happen. And in order to keep that from happening, those that are coming out of the system really need to be able to have resources to be able to succeed and not fall back into some of the people they maybe ran into in the past, some of the issues they dealt with before. So let's just kind of dive in. Let's start and talk about just some of the struggles that those people face when they're trying to get back into society and reintegrate.
I myself am formerly incarcerated, and so a lot of the things that we do at Persevere has to do with a lot of the experiences that we have had, whether it was a battle with addiction, battle with mental health, the loss of hope. And so what we wanted to do as an organization was provide software development training to individuals that have been impacted by the justice system to give them that hope and an opportunity to not only to provide for themselves, but also for their families. We want them to be able to thrive. And, a lot of times we're faced with barriers when it comes to employment, when it comes to housing. We face transportation barriers. But in the end, if we don't address a lot of those mental health issues or a lot of the addiction issues, it really doesn't matter what training we put them through. There's not going to be a level of success that we're really looking for.
It's definitely a good point because I think that's something that's being brought to the surface more and more is just the resources out there for mental health, because if you aren't healthy mentally, it's hard to really function in general. I definitely believe that everyone needs therapy. And so, of course, being able to get the mental help that anybody needs. It is so important to have that accessibility. And we were talking about just the financial situation right now. Inflation is impacting everybody. There's the talk of us going into recession and interest rates. I mean, all of that, I'm sure it has to be having a major impact on those that are trying to kind of start anew. What are you seeing and hearing?
Oh, for no doubt about it. There's already this this feeling of well, I have a felony, and so I'm not going to find a job over $8-10 an hour. And when you do have a background and you are fighting for those lower paid positions with individuals that already, they don't have a felony, it just makes it even harder. That's why when we started looking at our organization, we thought, well, technology is the way to go. A lot of individuals can work remotely. A lot of companies don't care as much about the person's background as they do what their technical skills are. So technology just kind of makes sense. Being able to train individuals while they're incarcerated for a highly paid, skilled position, or even after they are in, back in society and continue that education. But it's really hard when you're struggling to find transportation, find the housing, find employment when everybody around you is doing the exact same thing.
Well, and it's hard when you feel like you're starting from scratch. And I mean, because you got to think you have to have a deposit for that apartment, and you have to have a deposit to turn on utilities, and it's not cheap. I mean, I think we all struggle with something like that. So I can't even imagine starting from scratch and then feeling like you already have this shadow that is making it even more difficult. And let's talk about, though, I want to know more about this nonprofit, Persevere, and just some of the work that y'all do. How did you get involved with them? And then let's just talk about what they help to do.
So funny story. I actually met the founder of Persevere while I was incarcerated. I have a background working in recruitment and staffing, and found myself in the Department of Corrections here in Tennessee. And I'd gone up for parole, and they said, "Hey, we're not going to let you out until you have a job." And I was like, "Whoa, wait a minute! I have worked in recruitment and staffing for 17 years at that point." And I thought, well, how am I supposed to help myself behind these walls? And so I started advocating for myself, and I had seen Sean Hossman, who is our founder, multiple times at the central office location for the Tennessee Department of Corrections. And I just approached him, and I was like, "Hey, I heard that you have struggled with addiction. I heard that you owned your own technology company. I, am looking for employment. Here's my skills. This is what I've done in the past." And so next thing I know, the former commissioner, Tony Parker, approved Sean to hire me. And so I literally walked out the doors with a job in human resource and recruitment for his for-profit company. My vision while I was incarcerated was to help individuals find employment prior to leaving. It was something that I had experienced myself. It was, it was my job in the past. It was my career. I owned my own recruiting firm at one point. And so we really kind of put our ideas together. And then the next thing we know, our nonprofit is up and going. We implemented it in 3 prison facilities in the state of Tennessee in April of 2019, and we've just been growing strong ever since then. We are now not only in the state of Tennessee, but we are also in Arizona, South Carolina, Georgia, Virginia. We are moving into several other states. And here recently, Persevere was granted a Good Jobs Challenge grant. It was a $15.3 million grant that allowed us to expand our program beyond individuals behind the walls. So now we are able to offer our program to absolutely any county and city across the state of Tennessee. And so Not only do we focus in that area, but we also won a grant through the federal government to expand our youth program. So we will be working with individuals that are justice impacted by the juvenile system. And then we have a wraparound family approach where we believe that family reunification is one of the most important successes for an individual. And so we have a program where not only do we teach the individuals behind the wall, but also in the community that's been impacted or at risk, and their children between the ages of 9 and 18.
Wow. All of this too. I'm sitting here thinking since 2019. I mean, y'all have been y'all been plugging and going, and it's so impressive. And the thing is it's needed, obviously. I mean, if you see how it's grown and just really taken off since 2019, and it's interesting how certain people get put in your life for a reason, and the timing and how that ends up working out. But it's great to see. This is something that's needed. We talk so much here even about youth violence and helping to get kids back on the right path. And so getting into that juvenile system, I think, is going to be some vital work too. And so I think this is really cool. I think this is awesome that y'all are doing this, and just how the story all came together is really interesting. So I really would love to keep in touch with y'all too, and just any other programs that y'all are kind of getting started and would like to highlight. Definitely reach out to me. But I do want to make sure that we talk about, if someone is watching today and they know someone that is going to be coming out of the system that really wants to kind of need some help just to get back on their feet, or someone who was formerly incarcerated that wants to get some resources, where can people go to be able to get a hold of you guys?
So if you go to our website, it's www.perseverenow.org. And if you click on the family drop down and scroll down just a little bit, there is going to be an application link. And so you can complete an application online, or you can reach us at tnapps@perseverenow.org. And then, of course, we have an office location in Memphis. We are located at 4163 Willow Lake Boulevard. And so we have staff there in the office. We actually hold classes there in the office all day. So it's like a community resource center. We provide mental health training to our participants. We have case management services to our participants. And then we have employment specialists that are there on site that work with you as you complete our program in finding employment.
Well, this is really great. And Stacey, before I let you go, what kind of reaction have you had from people that have been able to benefit from what y'all are doing?
You know, it's so funny. We believe in what we're doing. And so we hire a lot of our graduates. We have several graduates right now that are in a teaching position, or they're in a case management role. It's so great to see someone go from no hope to having hope and thriving. And I just have to share, one of our graduates spent 6 years incarcerated and is now currently making $120,000 a year. And so that's our highest paid individual. Our lowest paid individual is around $50,000 a year. But it really depends, because there's so many different pathways that an individual can go into with the training that we offer. So for me, my proudest moment is just seeing them graduate and thriving and giving back.
Absolutely. And one thing, just having that hope. That word right there kind of sums it up. It's just to feel like there is hope for a better tomorrow and a way forward, a way out of the previous situation. Stacey Brooks, this has really been great getting to talk to you. I love hearing about the work that Persevere is doing, and please keep in touch. You have a great morning, all right?
Definitely, you too.
All right, take a look at the latest edition of La Prensa Latina on newsstands right now. You can see it there. President Biden and Lopez Obrador reach an agreement to control immigration and drug trafficking. That's the cover story of the latest edition of La Prensa Latina on newsstands. You can also check out LaPrensaLatina.com. Let's bring in our editor, Vivian Fernandez de Adamson. Vivian, happy Friday. How are you doing?
Hi, Andrew. How are you?
Doing fantastic. Thank you very much. And it was so great to chat earlier this week for our viewers that are watching right now. We had a chance to meet face to face and talk about different things, our partnerships, and 2023 going forward, WMC and La Prensa Latina. Let me ask you about this story that's in the pages of La Prensa Latina right now. Mid-South Mission of Mercy to hold its 8th annual free Delta Care event. Tell me about it.
Yes, this is something that they have been doing for years already. You know, like you said, it's the 8th annual dental event. So it is a free mobile clinic that they will have at Bellevue Baptist. It's going to be at their gym, actually, and it's going to be on January 20th and January 21st. And it is going to start at 6 in the morning each day, but they recommend that people get there like at, as early as they can, maybe if they can get there, between 4 and 5 in the morning, because, if you want to go at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, forget it. They're not going to see you. Like last year, they saw like 1,200 people. And this year they expect to see like at least 1,500 people. And then something that is really amazing about this is that out of these 1,200 patients that they saw last year, 37% were Hispanic.
Yeah, I was going to say, Vivian, this has got to be a huge event for the Latino community here to have something like this. I mean, 40% almost of the patients were from the Latino community.
Yes, that tells us, how big the community is here, that is growing. So, and again, this event is very important for the community because, there's a lot of people that cannot afford, going to dentist, or they don't have insurance, especially. So this is why they have this available for the community. So among the services that they will provide are cleanings, fillings, and extractions. So I talked to Dr. Mitchell Goddard, who is the CEO of Mid-South Mission of Mercy, and he said that this year they will have a 3D printer. So, they're going to be using this 3D printer to print partials to replace missing front teeth. So this is, just unbelievable that, you have this opportunity to go, and be able to have this service done. Now, again, you have to remember that if you want to be taken care of, at this event, you have to be there early.
Okay, good advice there, Vivian. Let's move on to another story that you're highlighting on the cover of La Prensa Latina. That's President Biden meeting with Mexico's president about an agreement to control immigration as well as drug trafficking. Tell me about that.
Yes, like we all know, they had the annual summit this week, in Mexico, between Canada, the U.S., and Mexico. And then they met and they had a conference and, they talk about different topics, like immigration, climate, and other things. So especially immigration is very important. Because of all, the immigrants that are coming to the U.S. From Nicaragua, El Salvador, Venezuela, Mexico including, So what President Lopez Obrador said is that they are going to help, the U.S. in controlling this situation. So, and obviously, it's not going to be like, immediately, but they're going to try. So right now, what they agreed on is that, the plan that the U.S. has for now is that they will send 30,000 immigrants per month from Cuba, Nicaragua, Haiti, and Venezuela back across the border from among those who enter the U.S. illegally. So immigrants who arrive from those countries are not easily returned to their home countries, for different reasons. So, that's what they're going to do. And in addition to these 30,000 people per month from those nations as well, and if they get sponsors and background checks, and they have an airline ticket, then, they'll be able to come to the U.S. and work legally in the country for 2 years. So this is one of the agreements that they have reached so far. And not only, they discussed about immigration, but also, the drug trafficking, trying to control this problem that affects everybody, especially with fentanyl. So what Lopez Obrador says is that they're going to control, the drugs that are coming from, other countries like Asia, for instance, other continents and other countries. So they're going to control the seaports, with military force, and hopefully, it'll stop or it'll get reduced. So let's see what happens.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, Vivian, thank you. This is, again, the cover of La Prensa Latina on newsstands now. You can also check out the articles online at laprensalatina.com. Before we let you go, Vivian, anything else?
Yes, back to the Mid-South Mission of Mercy. It is also very important to let people know that they're not going to check IDs. They're not going to ask, where you're from or IDs or anything. You can mark if you are, when you're registering, if you are Hispanic or whatever, but, they're not going to ask for your ID or if you have insurance or anything like that. And they're going to take care of kids, from kids to adults to seniors.
Okay, and there it is, the information, January 20th, 21st there, Mid-South Mission of Mercy. Be certain to save that date. Again, you can read all about it on the pages of La Prensa Latina, laprensalatina.com. Vivian, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
Likewise. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good morning. We have a cold front that is now pushed east of us. You probably felt that that temperature dropping as that cold air moved in yesterday behind the front. Well, now we're dry, although there could be a few flurries falling at any point of the day. Since we have clouds in place, that means that we have enough moisture from the middle to lower portions of the atmosphere for us to possibly get flurries and maybe even some sleet. 10 o'clock in the morning, First Alert Futurecast showing clearing in eastern Arkansas, clouds in West Tennessee, North Mississippi. If we did see any snow or sleet, it'd probably be later in the day by 3 o'clock here. Notice temperatures above freezing this whole time, so anything that falls is not going to stick. But there could be some sleet over towards areas like Corinth and Ashland. Possibility for a snow-sleet mixture. The pink would be the sleet. This bluish purpley color here would be the snow at 5:30. Some of that in Ashland and Fayette County. Spots like Selmer, Corinth, Brownsville getting sleet. We may also see some of this in Shelby County, especially areas like Collierville and Arlington, Lakeland. So eastern portions of Shelby County would have the best bet for getting any of that. And it doesn't last long. By 9 o'clock tonight, the moisture moves east as that system continues to push off towards the Atlantic. We'll no longer have any of that left over by 9 or 10 o'clock tonight. The rest of the evening is dry and even clouds clear out. It'll feel chilly today. We'll have actual temperatures around 40 degrees. That's why none of that's going to stick to the ground. But because of the winds, it feels a lot colder. It'll feel like the 20s all morning. We'll feel like 33 at 3 o'clock and still feeling like the lower 30s tonight. Now, as far as your wind gusts go, that's what's making it feel so much colder. We have wind gusts 20 to 25 miles per hour this morning, probably around 20 miles per hour with those northwest winds through 6 o'clock. After that, winds will start to die down. So wind chills won't be a huge factor if you have any Friday night plans after around 7 o'clock tonight. The high today, as I mentioned, is 40 degrees. Low temperatures tonight, though, will be back down to the upper 20s. And like I said, you could see some light snow or some sleet before 9 o'clock. After that, will be dry with a clear sky. Let's look at these temperatures for the weekend. 47 degrees on Saturday. And then on Sunday, a little bit warmer, high of 57. Not bad with sunshine in place both days this weekend. If you want to check that weekend forecast or get more details on that First Alert Futurecast with the snow and sleet chance that I was talking about, you can see that always on our First Alert weather app. Search for WMC and you can download that one for free. Our First Alert 7-day forecast showing a nice warming trend. Upper 50s Sunday. We're at 62 degrees on Monday. I have a first alert to some rain in the forecast on Monday. Most of that will be late in the day, late afternoon into the evening. Tuesday we dry out again. We're in the mid 60s, near 70 degrees on Wednesday, but a cold front moves through Wednesday. That's going to bring a chance for some thunderstorms, some which might be severe, something for us to monitor. And then by Thursday, behind the front, we're back down to the 50s.
An estimated 14 million people exposed to employment scams each and every year. That's according to the latest numbers from the Better Business Bureau. Consumer investigator Carice Jackman examines scammer strategies and explains how you can protect yourself from them.
Looking for a new job can be stressful and time-consuming, but when you add in the fact that scammers are scanning the same sites as you and looking for new targets, experts say job seekers are at risk of becoming fraud victims.
Folks are really, thinking about their employment status in ways that they never have before. And because of that, there are opportunities to, have the blinders on to a fault.
So far in 2022, the Federal Trade Commission has reported more than $250 million in losses tied to business and job opportunity scams, with the typical victim losing around $2,000. Josh Plinos with the Better Business Bureau says job scams increased during the pandemic.
Employment scams and phishing are north of 10% of the scam reports that we have tracked. These are really concerning trends because these are particularly devastating scam types.
The BBB released this detailed scam study in 2020, showing how con artists oftentimes post on legitimate sites and pose as employers using multiple methods to trick applicants. In the report, victims claimed the fake employers set up virtual interviews via video conference, but never showed the victims their face during those bogus interviews. The applicants said they got a series of personal questions and ended up divulging critical personal information, some even turning over bank account numbers to supposedly set up direct deposit at their new jobs. We asked several job search engine sites if they've noticed an uptick in scam reports and what they're doing to protect job seekers. 3 of them got back to us. Indeed told us they've removed tens of millions of job listings each month that do not meet their quality guidelines. ZipRecruiter told us they use proprietary detection software and they have a stringent client onboarding process to vet potential posers and deny access for those who fail to pass their screening process. While LinkedIn says they've rolled out new features to keep inauthentic activity off of their site. Experts say beware of vague job descriptions. Always report any suspicious posts from someone claiming to be an employer. And remember, if you're paying for the promise of a job, it's most likely a scam.
If you have some concerns just by reading the job posting, that should be a sign, right? And typically, your gut is going to lead you in the right path in terms of, getting your questions answered. So if you have a question, speak up.
With this Watching Your Wallet, I'm Carice Jackman.
Good morning.
Andrew Douglas in the Action News 5 Digital Desk. I want to show you this. This is the latest cover of the Memphis Magazine January edition there. Look at that pretty color. And vibrant there. The wedding album, Memphis Marriages in Photos. Good stuff there. Let's talk more about what's inside this edition with Chris McCoy, a writer with Memphis Magazine and the Memphis Flyer. Chris, Happy New Year. How you doing?
Happy New Year. I'm doing fine. How are you today?
Doing well. Thank you very much. Read the article that you wrote here, this one, about your little trip to the Gulf. You got the best job here doing all these trips all over the place. And wow, the Gulf Coast didn't disappoint, huh?
No, I can't complain. But so a few years ago, back in 2020, before the pandemic, my wife often goes with me on these trips as a photographer, and she has been doing it for years. I've been doing travel writing since, 2006, 2000-ish or so. And so a lot of times she'll go and take pictures. And in early 2020, we were supposed to go to the Gulf Coast for a travel story, and her other job, she couldn't go. She couldn't go to that one because her other job, which is a video and film editor, she had a gig pop up, so she couldn't go. So then the pandemic happens and we're stuck in the house for 2 years and we don't get to travel. And the whole time we were like, man, I wish you could have gone on that trip, because right before the pandemic, I wish you could have gone. So the opportunity arose again. And this time the stars aligned and she was able to go on this trip. And we stayed at the Henderson. We stayed at the Henderson Park Inn in Destin, and it's right next to the Henderson State Park. And Travel and Leisure voted it the most romantic hotel in America, I think back in 2017 or 2018. And so I was like, well, since we're going to do the weddings for our cover story, which made a beautiful cover, let's talk a little bit about how to make a romantic trip between a couple. This seemed like a good, use of our time. So that's what we did. We tried to go and check out a lot of stuff at the beach in Destin and on the Gulf Coast. We tried to figure out if it was romantic or not, if it was a good thing to do with your partner. And in order to do this, we had to figure out what that meant when we said romantic, right? So that's why I called the story A Theory of Romance. We had to figure out what romantic was before we figured out if something was romantic or not. We had to get our definition down. So some of the story is about us trying to figure out, what does romantic mean, really? And the way the story came together is me proposing things and my wife's name is Laura Jean Hawking, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier. For Laura Jean for us to do together. And then she would be like, is that romantic or not? And then she would decide, what it was. But I'll tell you, staying at the Henderson, at the Park Inn, there's the Henderson Park Inn, which is a small B&B on the beach. And then there is the Henderson Resort, which is a 110-room, high rise that's on the same property, but it's set back from the beach. And it also has like a 10,000 square foot spa and stuff, 2 pools, 3 restaurants. It's the full resort experience. So you get to use some of that if you stay in the Henderson. So, we did a couple spa thing there, which we've decided was extremely romantic. When we arrived at the Henderson, they had love spelled out in rose petals on the bed, which we also decided was extremely romantic, and for obvious reasons. But it turned into a really great trip. And the definition of romance that we ended up with, the theory of romance that we ended up with, was it needs to be an activity that allows you to be present with your partner. It allows you to shut out the world and just be there with the person that you love and concentrate on. That's why, for example, miniature golf turned out to be really romantic because we were able to just concentrate on each other and have a good time. So anyways, I think the story ended up being really fun. And, I'm really happy that we did it. And I hope that it helps some folks, go and have a romantic trip and improve their relationships.
I love your explanation about it, Chris. That was spot on, and we don't want to give too much of it away because we want people to pick up the magazine and look through it. And in addition to your writing, Chris, some great pictures that I guess your wife took, Laura took along the way that really kind of makes everything come to life in that article. So nice, and I really enjoyed it. What about the local wedding photographs here? Because we see the cover right here, which is a beautiful cover. Lots of colors, and then the article about various local weddings. Tell me more about this.
Well, we went around to all the wedding photographers that we could find and we could think of who might have some good stuff, and we started from there. We were like, show us some of your best pics, your best images that you think would be good for the magazine, that would be publishable. And then, we worked outwards from there. And it turns out there's a lot of good photographers in this city, which is something that really working for Memphis Magazine has shown me. But, a lot of them, that's what they do, to make ends meet. They go and photograph weddings. So you can have some really great talent, shooting you on the most important day of your life, and it helps out a lot of photographers who are artists in their other lives. But they do fantastic work, and I think they just did a great job sourcing all these photographs and finding the right ones. But I do believe the one thing that story shows is that if you're going to get married in Memphis and you need a photographer, you're in good hands because we got some good folks here.
Absolutely, totally agree here, and again, this is all on the cover of the first issue of the year for Memphis Magazine. There, you can see the wedding album, Memphis Marriages in photos there. Again, the January edition of Memphis Magazine. Before we let you go, Chris, anything else you want to mention?
Hey, thank you for having me, and Happy New Year. We got some good stuff for the magazine coming up in the new year. I mentioned photography, and our February issue focuses on photographers. So once you've devoured the January issue, that's what you have to look forward to.
Well, I look forward to it. I can't wait to get it in the mail, my January edition. Look forward to each and every time it comes in the mail. Chris McCoy, we appreciate you spending time with us each and every time you do. Thanks for all the hard work. Much success to you in 2023. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Same to you.
Andrew Douglas back here in the Action News 5 Digital Desk. September is World Alzheimer's Awareness Month, and a lot of times when you have a parent that has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, it doesn't just affect them. It affects the entire family. It affects the caregivers. It affects the entire network. And a lot of times there is that feeling of loneliness that comes with it. Well, now there is an online support group that is trying to help that. It's called Parenting Aging Parents. And I'm joined now by the founders, the co-founders of this online support community, Kim and Mike Barnes. They are joining us there from Texas, right? Good morning to you both.
Yes. That's right. We're in Austin, but the issues are worldwide.
Yes, no question about it. Good morning to you. Thanks for being with us. I have an aging parent. I have a father who was diagnosed with Alzheimer's several years ago. So this is right in my wheelhouse. I know exactly what you guys are going through. Tell me about the idea of this online support community and why it was important for you both to discover this and ignite this and really kind of make sure that everyone knows about it.
Well, it came about because of my mom having Alzheimer's and going through all of that, which, as you know, is not a very fun thing to do. But as my mom's Alzheimer's got worse and worse and worse, we talked to my dad, my sister and I did, about having to move her to memory care because things were getting so bad. And my dad said, that's fine. Y'all are in charge. So we went and looked at 4 memory care places pretty close to where they lived. And we felt so overwhelmed. We had no idea what questions to ask, what to look for, what the red flags might be. So we were very, very, very overwhelmed.
And when he came home from that trip, he said, I feel like if we were really prepared with all the legal and financial and all of those documents and information that you feel like is the important stuff that you need to have, which it is important to have, yet he said, if we felt that overwhelmed and felt prepared, I can't imagine how most people feel. And during that time, we were also going through challenges with my mom, who lives in a different city than we are and has been diagnosed with mixed dementia. And just, we've had to take the checkbook away, and we've had to sort of get her not to quit, not to drive anymore. And so all of those things. And so when Mike said, I feel like we should help people, the easiest thing we thought to do would be, let's start an online community, a free private Facebook group to bring people together, because you can often feel like, surely I'm the only person doing this. And then you realize once you start asking around, everybody is, but just nobody talks about it.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying. And so here is this online place for support for that family, those caregivers out there. When people go to this site, and go ahead and give us the web address or where people can find this group, what can they find in addition to that support?
Well, the website is parentingagingparents.com. And on the website, we have more than 50 interviews with experts, with lawyers, with doctors, with insurance people about Medicare, Medicaid, all kinds of things, because there's so much information out there that you just have no idea what it is. And when you're the young adult or the older adult caregiver of an aging parent, the adult child of a caregiver, you don't know what to look for, what questions to ask, what's available out there. So that helps that. But we also figured out very quickly that so many people in this type of condition, this state of their life, feel so alone because it's not something that you bring up with people. You don't go to your neighbors or go to a party or go to work and say, yeah, I'm not doing too well with Alzheimer's. How are you doing today? It just doesn't go that way.
So the on the website, you'll find all those interviews, and then also a button that leads right to joining the Facebook group if they're interested. And within that group, you just see people supporting and helping each other, giving insight and sharing experiences. Because if there's one thing that I've learned from my mom getting scammed multiple times, that I can tell somebody else to help them either figure out what to do when that happens or prevent it. That's awesome. I love being able to do that, because as I mentioned, we don't talk about it, and we can't help each other if we don't talk about it. So it really just brings people together to have that safe place to be able to say, I don't know what to do. Here's the situation, or that kind of thing, to really feel supported and feel like you have others that can appreciate and understand what you're going through.
Those scammers out there that call, I want to like reach out across the phone, into the phone, and just strangle them. It is so frustrating how they prey on some of these older Americans out there. Tell me, when you are kind of looking and set up this site, parentingagingparents.com, what are some of the biggest questions that you guys get on the site?
Oh gosh, I think it's everything from my mom doesn't want to or dad doesn't want to quit driving. What should we do? My parent doesn't want to admit that there's a problem, or that they are having memory challenges or other physical challenges, and they don't want to potentially leave home, or even if they want to stay at home, they don't want to bring in care.
Yeah, or many times it's a case of where mom and dad are getting so old that they really can't handle things themselves anymore. But I don't have a power of attorney. I don't know what to do. Is it too late? They have a little bit of dementia. What's going to happen there? There are so many questions out there, and luckily there's so many people in the group that different people and different providers are also part of the group that are able to give a little bit of advice and help people out.
How many people do you have on that site, and is there any kind of fee, or can people just join for free?
Yeah.
It's a free Facebook group. We have about 30, we're getting up close to 4,000 people from all around the country, and even a few from around the world. But because I think that, while state by state, some of the legal things might be a little bit different, Medicaid may operate just a little bit different. But when it comes to especially the emotional support, so many of those challenges are the same, whether it's, I had a really tough relationship with my parent growing up, and now that I'm trying to help take care of it, that brings all of those frustrations and difficulties back. Maybe it's the siblings are having a challenge getting along or deciding what's the best thing for our parents. And so I think that it's how do we bring people together? But yeah, we want to be able to keep that Facebook group free, and so that that anybody who needs it is available to help.
Yeah, because it's a great place to vent, and that's the biggest thing I think that I've seen that kind of surprised me in some ways, because I have Kim to be able to vent to at times if I run into something. But there's so many things that you run into as an adult child of an aging parent, especially one with Alzheimer's. So a recent time when I went to visit my mom, the first thing that came out of her mouth was, "I don't recognize you." And the second thing that came out of her mouth was, "Are you my brother?" And then the third thing that came out of her mouth was, "Why are you here?" And that's not fun. I'm her only son. She's the only mom I've ever had. So, when something like that happens, it hurts. It's not fun to deal with, but this gives you a platform, a community to be able to express yourself and say how it feels to you and get the support that you need.
And sometimes makes you, and this isn't the right way to say, but it makes you feel like you're not crazy, that you're not that you don't think the feelings that I'm having, the guilt that I'm feeling, the love I'm feeling. I mean, all of those, the gamut of emotions, that you realize that that's normal, and that other people are having those same experiences too.
Thank you so much for setting this up, because I think this is a wonderful resource for so many people that have older parents that are going through this, or perhaps just been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. In fact, if you were reaching out right now and you knew that someone just had their older parent diagnosed with Alzheimer's, is there a top 3 checklist that you would tell somebody, or top 5 checklists that you would tell them right now, here's what you have to do in order to just kind of, you got the diagnosis, here are the 3 to 5 things you need to do right now? What would you tell them?
I'd say, depending on how far along they are, make sure you've got all your legal documentation in place, because once they progress to a point where they're not competent to be able to make decisions, and you don't already have that power of attorney and some of that other legal documents in place, it's too late.
Yeah.
So making sure you have as much of that that you can.
Figure things out about housing. As far as what were their wishes or what are their wishes? Do they want to stay in their home? Can they afford to go to memory care or assisted living or independent living? What's the situation with housing to make things easier there?
And then I think educating yourself just as what to expect, because Alzheimer's or other dementias are not necessarily, it's not an overnight thing generally. And so there's going to be time to be able to prepare a little bit and know what to expect and be able to find those people that can support you as you're going along the way. Mike has a friend whose parent is one stage ahead. And so he's been a great resource for Mike to be able to kind of know what to know what's coming next. And, within our group, we have so many people. I think dementia in general, which is, as we've learned, is just one type. Alzheimer's is just one type of dementia. But the most common type is that there's, no matter what the physical or mental or cognitive challenge is, we all need that support.
Yeah.
Well, Kim and Mike Barnes, we appreciate you and we appreciate everything that you're doing. ParentingAgingParents.com. Thanks so very much for not only creating this site, this online resource for everyone, but also giving some tips and some friendly reminders for everyone out there that's going through that. God bless you both. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good morning. We have a cold front that is now pushed east of us. You probably felt that that temperature dropping as that cold air moved in yesterday behind the front. Well, now we're dry, although there could be a few flurries falling at any point of the day. Since we have clouds in place, that means that we have enough moisture from the middle to lower portions of the atmosphere for us to possibly get flurries and maybe even some sleet. 10 o'clock in the morning, First Alert Futurecast showing clearing in eastern Arkansas, clouds in West Tennessee, North Mississippi. If we did see any snow or sleet, it'd probably be later in the day. By 3 o'clock here, notice temperatures above freezing this whole time, so anything that falls is not going to stick. But there could be some sleet over towards areas like Corinth and Ashland. Possibility for a snow-sleet mixture. The pink would be the sleet. This bluish purpley color here would be the snow at 5:30. Some of that in Ashland and Fayette County. Spots like Selmer, Corinth, Brownsville getting sleet. We may also see some of this in Shelby County, especially areas like Collierville and Arlington, Lakeland. So eastern portions of Shelby County would have the best bet for getting any of that. And it doesn't last long. By 9 o'clock tonight, the moisture moves east as that system continues to push off towards the Atlantic. We'll no longer have any of that left over by 9 or 10 o'clock tonight. The rest of the evening is dry and even clouds clear out. It'll feel chilly today. We'll have actual temperatures around 40 degrees. That's why none of that's going to stick to the ground. But because of the winds, it feels a lot colder. It'll feel like the 20s all morning. We'll feel like 33 at 3 o'clock and still feeling like the lower 30s tonight. Now, as far as your wind gusts go, that's what's making it feel so much colder. We have wind gusts 20 to 25 miles per hour this morning, probably around 20 miles per hour with those northwest winds through 6 o'clock. After that, winds will start to die down. So wind chills won't be a huge factor if you have any Friday night plans after around 7 o'clock tonight. The high today, as I mentioned, is 40 degrees. Low temperatures tonight, though, will be back down to the upper 20s. And like I said, you could see some light snow or some sleet before 9 o'clock. After that, we'll be dry with a clear sky. Let's look at these temperatures for the weekend. 47 degrees on Saturday. And then on Sunday, a little bit warmer, high of 57. Not bad with sunshine in place both days this weekend. If you want to check that weekend forecast or get more details on that First Alert Futurecast with the snow and sleet chance that I was talking about, you can see that always on our First Alert weather app. Search for WMC and you can download that one for free. Our First Alert 7-day forecast showing a nice warming trend. Upper 50s Sunday. We're at 62 degrees on Monday. I have a First Alert to some rain in the forecast on Monday. Most of that will be late in the day, late afternoon into the evening. Tuesday we dry out again. We're in the mid 60s, near 70 degrees on Wednesday, but a cold front moves through Wednesday. That's going to bring a chance for some thunderstorms, some which might be severe, something for us to monitor. And then by Thursday, behind the front, we're back down to the 50s.
Andrew Douglas in the Action News 5 digital desk. We are talking about Volunteer Memphis MLK Days of Service, and we want to bring in and figure out what Baptist Healthcare and their involvement in Volunteer Memphis MLK Days of Service. What better person to talk to than Dr. Keith Norman? He is someone who is very familiar with this organization and when it comes to Volunteer Memphis, and also being the pastor of First Baptist Broad and Baptist VP of Governmental Affairs and Chief Community Relations Officer. Have I left anything out, Dr. Norman?
No, just a person who loves Memphis and loves to serve.
Excellent, sir. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about Baptist's role in Volunteer Memphis MLK Days of Service. Good morning.
Sure. Good morning, and thank you for this opportunity. Well, Baptist is excited again to be really one of the host sponsors, one of the lead sponsors for this event, because service and serving the Memphis community and the Mid-South is really something that we love to do. MLK Days of Service will kick off, and it's already kicked off for us because we've engaged over 19,000 employees across the Mid-South area, not just here in the city of Memphis, but in our outlets and other states across the Mid-South, to really roll up their sleeves and to go to work on behalf of their communities by providing service in so many different ways beyond just what comes into our hospital doors.
Exactly. And so we're looking at some video now of Volunteer Memphis and really kind of asking everyone between January 12th and 16th to search, choose, and volunteer. Give me some ideas of what some of the employees at Baptist are planning to do.
Well, our major effort will be that we will collect disposable diapers and wipes at all of our Memphis Metro locations starting January 13th for Leadership Memphis. And we're going to distribute them in areas where they're needed most. At the Hollywood Community Center, at 1560 North Hollywood, and then at the NAACP office, we have a partnership and a program going there called My Baby for Me. And then the Orange Mound Community Center, we're actually going to have our Baptist Women's Mobile Mammography Unit there to give free breast cancer screenings for those women who need it. We realize that oftentimes these services and the people who need these services the most can't always get to them. You know, Dr. King said one of the forms of inequality that is most shocking is when healthcare is not adequately provided for people. So Baptist chooses to really get out into the streets and take our healthcare model into those communities, because we realize that there are just some people from the health disparities that we see that some people just can't get adequate healthcare. So we want to get those services to the people.
Why is it so important for Baptists to be involved in this and almost, take almost a leadership role in getting people to volunteer?
Loving and caring is a part of our mission. Our mission is built on the threefold mission of Jesus Christ, which is preaching, teaching, and healing. Well, if you look at the model of Christ's ministry, and this is the part I love in the work that I do both in the church and at Baptist, Christ went to where the people were. He cared, and the healing model was really there to say, look, I care for you, and Baptist cares for people. Our people love to serve. They get excited about these kinds of things. You'll see them in their T-shirts and in their Baptist paraphernalia all over the Mid-South area because they love to roll up their sleeves and serve the various communities which we come from. And this is not just something we do at MLK Day of Service. I mean, when water was not flowing in our city, we were out trying to find ways to serve people. When this was happening in other parts of Mississippi region where we have hospitals there, we were out trying to serve people. During the COVID pandemic, we actually took our homeless van and we vaccinated the homeless community around the city of Memphis. We wanted to make sure everyone had adequate health care. So serving is just what we like to do. And I like to call myself the chief service officer. So that community relations part of my job gives me an opportunity to say, hey, here's an opportunity where Baptist can be of service.
Let's talk about now ways that people can join in this whole process.
Sure. There will be spaces and places around town. Again, you can go to our hospital, or you can go and you can drop off wipes or diapers, or you can actually go to these places. The Hollywood Community Center on Saturday, January the 14th, we'll be there. We're starting a little early, between the hours of 2 and 4. You can go there. If you want to go by the NAACP office, you can drop off items there. They're at 588 Vance Avenue. And then we really want to encourage, especially the women in the Orange Mound community, to come out and join us at 2430 Carnes Avenue. And then for more information on how to volunteer, you can log on to our website, or you can contact Anne-Marie Wallace at annemarie.wallace@bmhcc.org. That's for community people or for any of our employees who may not have had an opportunity to sign up as well. Annemarie.wallace@bmhcc.org.
Any lasting message, Dr. Norman, that you'd like to leave with our viewers this morning?
You know, I just love to say thank you to this community for allowing us to serve. Our lives begin around service every day when we wake up, when we have the opportunity. I tell people living in Memphis, Tennessee, you have something you can do and contribute every day. There's an opportunity to help your fellow man in some way, shape, form, or fashion. Baptist loves this work that we do all throughout our community. We love to be able to assist people. We love to provide excellent healthcare service. We love to make sure that the most vulnerable people in our community have access to the highest quality of life and the best healthcare available. And we enjoy doing it for over 100 years right here in this community. And nothing's going to stop us now.
All right, Pastor Keith Norman, pastor of First Baptist Broad and Baptist Healthcare's Vice President of Government Affairs and Chief Community Relations Officer. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you, and have great success in 2023.
Thank you, and likewise.
Did you know that 64% of Americans typically abandon their New Year's resolution within the first month? That doesn't surprise me at all. And you know what's at the top of the list typically? It has to deal with getting in shape, and it also has to deal with your financial shape. You got to get in your financial shape. And so many people just abandon this after that first month. Well, it's time to get back on track when it comes to your finances. And here to help us out is the founder of the Fiscal Femme. We are joined now by Ashley Feinstein-Gerstley. Thank you for joining us, Ashley. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for having me.
No, I appreciate it. So let's talk about the number one tip to getting our budgets back on track. It is February, it's mid-February. Maybe some people have lost track of their New Year's resolutions. How do we get it back on track, Ashley?
My number one tip is to purge expenses that you won't miss or aren't using. And to clean up the finances, look at what you spent so far this year. Are there subscriptions that you aren't using or completely forgot about? Or maybe there are expenses that aren't adding much value or happiness to your life. We want to let go of those expenses first.
Always good advice. I mean, it's like we have to pay off all of our bills from the holiday season, and it's like, we need a way to get back on track. There are a lot of tools out there to make sure that we're spending properly, that our spending is in order. Are there any that you would recommend, Ashley?
Just like you said with the holidays, sometimes we need some time to pay things off. So we want to make our finances flexible. I've partnered with a firm and I recommend them because they offer a transparent way to pay over time on your own schedule on anything from last minute travel expenses, home essentials, electronics, and even car repair without the hidden fees or compound interest that you might find with credit cards.
Good advice there. And, I've heard this before that people like a high credit score. In fact, they find it sexy if your finances are in order. And we saw this in a new survey out that financial stability is sexy. Tell me more.
Yes, if you needed one more reason to stick with your money resolutions, financial stability is sexy. A recent survey from a firm showed that consumers are prioritizing finances in their relationship. And actually, the majority, 3 out of 4, say that financial stability is a turn on. So if you are looking for love or looking to rekindle some love, you want to get that budget in order. And a great way to do that is to surround yourself by friends, family, loved ones who will help you and support you in your money goals.
You know, I remember hearing something a few years ago when there was, you know, Match.com and all these online dating apps. They talked about, well, what is your credit score? And I thought that was kind of funny and foolish, but in actuality, there's a lot of truth to that. You know, what is your financial stability? That's interesting how it is. What about any other final advice that we haven't hit on yet?
We want to simplify, simplify, simplify. So the easier it is to keep our finances in order, the easier it is to stay on track. And a great place to start is with our accounts. Do you have extra savings accounts, checking accounts, or have you been meaning to roll over a company 401k? We want to consolidate and simplify. And we can also do that with our budget. So the fewer categories we have, the easier it is to track and maintain. And we can always add details later. And another final tip is to make our spending intentional. Every time we spend money, we have the opportunity to vote for more of the world we want to see and to align our spending with our values. And that might mean switch a recurring expense over to a BIPOC or woman-owned business, or to purchase goods from a company working to be more sustainable. And often when our spending is more intentional, it has the wonderful side effect of actually reducing the amount we spend.
I like that. I like all of that. Now, for more information on where people can go to get more of what we talked about, where can they do that?
Yes, they can learn more about Affirm at affirm.com and can follow along my budgeting tips at the Fiscal Femme.
Okay, Ashley Feinstein Gerstley, the Fiscal Femme founder. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it. Have a great rest of the week.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hey there, Amanda Hansen here at the Action News 5 Digital Desk. Social media, cell phones, Zoom phone calls. It seems like there has been a large uptick in people getting plastic surgery to their face during the pandemic, that sort of thing. But we're talking today about some of the trends out there when it comes to plastic surgery. And joining us now to talk more about it is Dr. Richard Westreich. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Happy Friday.
Yeah, glad to be here and glad to be talking with you. You know, I'm so interested about all of this. I remember a couple years back, I did a story and it was talking about people getting nose jobs because it was more flattering when they were on social media or using Snapchat and things like that. And let's kind of talk about that trend and then, of course, some of the other things that we're seeing right now. Do you feel like that since there's been all of this with social media, filters, and that sort of thing, that there are more people that are interested in looking at what type of plastic surgery options are out there?
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, over the last 3 to 5 years, there's been an increase, and I definitely think during the pandemic, it went up even more exponentially. You know, we live in a very visual world where you're seeing yourself, on your phone and photography, on your posts all the time. And I think that there's just a lot of feedback that you're constantly getting about the way you look. And, for some people, this causes, a reasonable amount of distress. And so I think it definitely pushed them to seek solutions.
And what is it like with you when you have people that come in, they have questions, they want to know about various different surgeries out there? What is that consultation process like when it comes to deciding whether or not it's going to be the right fit to do that sort of thing?
Well, people generally do come in with like a fairly streamlined idea of what they want to accomplish. There are some patients that come in kind of like with a blank slate and what do you think? So there's different types of journeys kind of that we go through in the consult. But ultimately, I view my role as being somebody who will listen to what a patient's asking, what they want to achieve, and then basically tell them whether or not what they want to achieve is reasonable and feasible, and marry that, say, with the risk, because all surgery carries some sort of risk. Like, is that outcome worth it, given the risk of this particular procedure. So I try to kind of make it very comprehensive and not just simply about, the carpentry or what have you of the surgery. I try to put it into overall context and make sure that they understand, whether or not it's a good idea for them.
And now that we're getting past the pandemic and we're not sitting in front of a screen all the time doing all of our conversations and things like that, do you see that there is a trend where people are pivoting back to maybe focusing more on their body than just facial type plastic surgery?
Oh, definitely. Over this summer, there was a definite reversal in some of the trends that we saw during the pandemic. Like before the pandemic, body procedures were generally, 1 and 2, maybe 3. Then facial procedures were still popular, but they were maybe 4, 5, and 6 in terms of what was most common. And during the pandemic, that completely flipped. And so like rhinoplasty and eye lifts and actually a lot of jawline, people were really interested in their jawline, I think, because of Zoom during the pandemic. And those were kind of like 1, 2, 3. And traditional procedures like breast augmentation or tummy tuck or liposuction were definitely, less than they used to be prior to the pandemic. This summer, that trend totally started reversing and a lot of body procedures came back into vogue. Maybe it was the Zoom boom effect going away. Maybe it was also, some of the weight we all tended to put on during the pandemic. So it's kind of back to like a new normal of somewhere in between 2019 and 2020. And maybe that'll just be kind of the where it stays.
And I think it's interesting, too, how social media and all these different apps out there, and with the kind of birth of filters and being able to kind of see what your face looks like in different various ways, I could see how that would have an impact on people maybe seeking information about things like that. But one thing that I kind of want to talk a little bit more about that I've seen a few different cases of this is where people are bundling some of these procedures. Can you talk about what that entails and is it more cost effective?
Yes. So I think bundling procedures is actually a pretty good idea up to a point. When you go in to have a surgical procedure, there is a reasonable amount of work and testing and other things that you have to do before the procedure. Then when you go to have the procedure, there's sort of a time investment in getting prepped and going to sleep and recovering. And then obviously there's the personal cost of the time that you spend recovering from this procedure. So if you can get multiple things done in one time, then all of those things that I just outlined basically become saved from a future procedure. And so I think it is really convenient for patients to do more than one thing if they're thinking about multiple things, but only say up to a point. Because, in surgery, length of time does have some relevance for complications and other factors. And obviously, one kind of surgery is different than another. Fortunately, plastic surgery tends to be pretty safe and the time element isn't as much of a concern, but there's been numerous studies. Some studies have shown, if the surgical time more than 3 hours is kind of the inflection point where risk may go up. Other studies have shown, 6 to 7 hours. So there's a wide variety depending on what you're doing, but you definitely want to make sure that you don't do too much because then you may be, taking on unnecessary risk. And, the savings is really about time and effort and things of that nature. There is monetary savings because when you're doing cosmetic surgery, time is an element that you have to pay for. But, as with all things, there's an inflection point where that logic kind of no longer holds true. And I'd say that's probably for most patients somewhere on the order of like 5 to 6 hours. Anything more than that, like you may just be assuming too much risk.
And are there certain procedures that, when it comes to which ones you can combine together, how many procedures could you get in one swoop like that? What can you say as far as that goes? Are there certain procedures that kind of pair well together than others?
Sure. So, for me, for example, like I do a lot of nose surgery and I do a lot of neck surgery and I do a lot of eye surgery. So those three surgeries kind of go together, very nicely because it's all in kind of one area. Then, the way that you have to care for yourself is somewhat complementary. And people will do this all the time. They'll have a lower face lift and a brow lift and a upper and lower eyelid procedure. So that those things have traditionally always kind of gone together. But I'm seeing patients that are coming in and let's say they're getting some abdominal liposuction and a rhinoplasty, and they're sort of combining things that traditionally people didn't think about in the past, but they're not a problem to do together. I think when you run into problems or certain procedures, like I know, for example, it's been very popular, the Brazilian butt lift is a very popular procedure for the last 5+ years. That procedure you can't combine with other things simply because in order to have that procedure, you're going to be lying on your stomach, and then you cannot be flipped around onto your back in order to get these other procedures, and vice versa. So some of it has to do with sort of technical elements of positioning. And then also there are some procedures, like if you're going to do an abdominoplasty, one of the things you don't want to do is kind of do too extensive of a leg procedure, because one of the things you want to make sure that people do after that procedure is mobilize and be able to walk around so that they avoid issues like getting clots in their legs and other complications due to immobility.
Yeah, I was going to ask about just post-op, any kind of problems you can have with that, because obviously what happens after the surgery is so important too. What kind of tips do you have for people when it comes to that post-op care?
Well, I think one thing is for sure, make sure that, you have somebody available to you in that first day or two. Like if you live alone, make sure that you have somebody that could help you out, because I don't think most patients actually really know what it's going to be like. And if you're ill prepared and, your place isn't stocked and you don't have the medications that you need or other elements, it can be really challenging and create a lot of anxiety and stress. So number one is make sure that you have the appropriate help. Number two is that I think a lot of people think that resting after surgery is what they're supposed to be doing, but it is actually very important for you to be mobile and walk around. I alluded to before patients getting, blood clots in their legs. We never want the patients lying flat, lying around after surgery. We want them doing things. So like I advise my patients, they should be walking around on day one, even if it's just, a trip to the refrigerator, just something. So mobility, help. And then I think also just to make sure that you have a really good understanding, some practices do a better job of explaining to people, what it's going to be like after the fact. And if you don't feel that you really have a good sense of what it's going to be like, just, ask those couple extra questions and make sure that you feel solid, because then you won't be surprised. And again, if you know it's coming, it tends to produce a little bit less, anxiety. And anxiety we want to avoid during that period for sure.
What about safety tips when it comes to people, getting these types of procedures and to make sure that they have a better outcome? You hear about people going abroad to get different surgeries done and things like that. What kind of safety tips do you have or advice when it comes to that sort of thing?
Well, there's definitely some issues with going abroad since you brought that up. I think, people do it, and I think the vast majority of the time it works out fine. But, there are problems with continuity of care if you do have an issue. Also, if you do go abroad, I think you should actually spend some time trying to find out if the regulatory environment there is similar to what we have in the United States, just from a safety standpoint. Additionally, what I think patients really need to be aware of nowadays is, when we were doing the Zoom consultations and the process kind of sped up, people were kind of jumping into things. And I think it is very, very important. I never operate on somebody without meeting them in person. And so my practice philosophy was, for the last few years, even if we do a virtual consult, I always give my patients the ability to say cancel their surgery until they actually come to meet me in person. So I think if you're doing a surgery and you should make sure that you're able to cancel it, not just after the Zoom, but after you meet them in person. And then I think the most important thing is to really make sure that the person that is operating on you has the appropriate background for that particular procedure. One of the things that a lot of patients don't know, and so I always bring this up, is that when you're operating in a private operating room, let's say a doctor has a OR in their office, there's no third party determining whether or not that doctor is qualified to do the procedure. When I operate in the hospital, there's someone in the hospital that checks my background and checks my credentials and says, is Dr. Westreich qualified to do a breast augmentation? And if the answer is no, then they won't let me do it. So when you're doing it in a private setting, you then have to do that due diligence and make sure, and look, like I did facial plastics and I did ear, nose, and throat. So I don't really do a lot of body surgery. And so, if I'm proposing to you that I want to do a breast augmentation, for example, you should probably ask me like what my additional training credentials are that makes me qualified in order to do that procedure. So you have to look at their actual board certifications and training and just make sure that it makes sense.
That's really good advice. I would not have even thought about that when you were talking about, if it's a private surgical facility versus like if you were, working out of a hospital where there is that third party. So that is an interesting point for sure. And kind of switching gears a little bit, some of the less invasive procedures, what are some of the most popular things you're seeing right now?
Well, Botox has always been a very popular one, but I think that's actually gaining in popularity, and it's actually gaining in popularity towards a younger and younger crowd in this concept of kind of preventative treatments. So Botox, fillers, those have always been very popular. But what I am seeing that's gaining in popularity is non-invasive skin tightening procedures, both for the face and body. And also there have been a myriad of body contouring machines that are targeting towards muscle over the last 4 or 5 years. I think it started with Emsculpt, and there's been a bunch of other machines that came out to actually build muscle. Those are becoming increasingly popular, and patients really do seem to like it.
I've seen a lot of that on social media with just some of the people that I follow doing those types of procedures and things like that. And like even what you said with Botox, the younger and younger population, I've heard, I know people that are in their early 20s that are already getting Botox in some sort of preventative route. This has been really interesting talking with you. Is there any other information or anything else you might want to add before we let you go?
Well, I guess just in lieu of kind of what we were talking about before, I just would like to add from a patient standpoint of just, always take your time and try not to make snap decisions because, these are real surgeries and real treatments, even for the non-invasive things. And just always do your due diligence. You'll never be unhappy that you did.
Well, Dr. Westreich, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us here at the Digital Desk, and you have a good one, all right?
You too. Thanks for having me.
Okay, Andrew Douglas here in the Action News 5 Digital Desk. Police departments nationwide are coping with critical staff shortages and are struggling to hire patrol officers, 911 operators, and plenty more. And this comes at a time where crime rates continue to skyrocket and relationships between the police departments and the communities they serve continues to become more tense. Let's bring in Markel Hutchins, CEO of Movement Forward and a police community relations activist, to talk more about this issue. Markel, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. It's good to be with you.
Good to have you here with us. How bad is this problem, Markel?
Well, it is really the most challenging issue that I think our nation faces today at a time when crime and violence is escalating in some of our most vulnerable communities, law enforcement agencies continue to face a difficult time with retaining the talent that they have and attracting new talent. More law enforcement professionals have left the profession in the last 12 months than any other time in a consecutive 12-month period. So we really have to put a focus and shift the narrative away from the things that divide us to the things that unite us. And that's what I think our nation needs most at this moment.
You notice, Markel, I'm thinking back, the 2020, you had the death of George Floyd, and then you had this huge undercurrent of this negativity towards police departments nationwide. Is that part of this problem?
I think that is a driving factor in what is now a historic shortage in law enforcement. After the death of George Floyd and even the police-involved controversies that led up to the protest of the summer of 2020, all of those things combined were a powder keg that have exploded on America's streets. The challenge that law enforcement faces is no one wants to be a police officer now because of all of the animosity, all of the anger, all of the resentment that has been directed and in some instances misdirected at our nation's law enforcement professionals. But the good news is our darkest hours as a nation have always been before the break of a new dawning. We created National Faith in Blue Weekend. The Memphis Police Department and the other law enforcement agencies in Memphis are very much engaged. They want to reach out to the community. So the second weekend in October across Memphis and across the country, law enforcement agencies and communities have an opportunity to come together, to sit together and reason together to figure out a pathway forward to deal with officer shortages, as well as the escalating crime and continuing tensions that face our country.
Markel, 2 years ago, the Defund the Police movement was so, it gained a lot of stature and status. And I'm just wondering how much of those residual effects of this Defund the Police movement is still persistent among cities across the country and, just contributing to this problem.
You know, I have been at the forefront of human and civil rights for the last 25 years. I had the good fortune to be mentored by many of the icons that work very closely with Martin Luther King Jr., including his wife, Mrs. Coretta Scott King. I'm a civil rights, human rights, social justice guy. The notion of defunding the police is the arch enemy of communities of color and of any community. We cannot defund our way to safer streets nor to reduction in officer-involved tragedies. But what we've seen over the last several years has been the amplification of the vocal minority, those who seek to demonize law enforcement, drive wedges between police and communities. But that's a real small number of people. What we have seen is an epic failure in the Defund the Police movement. That was not a movement at all. I think most people in communities from Memphis to everywhere across this country understand that we have to stand in solidarity with our law enforcement professionals. We want to be policed with fairness and justice and equity, but we cannot allow these small few voices to really put forward a message around defunding the police, because that just hurts our communities. And that call for defunding of the police has really detracted and distracted people who might have otherwise chosen careers in law enforcement.
So, Markel, here in Memphis, the Memphis Police Department has been trying all kinds of incentives to boost up the amount of officers within the department, because there is a shortage, and all the city leaders and the police leaders have said, hey, we need to hire hundreds more to get up to the staff where we are comfortable. They've tried all kinds of different hiring bonuses, free relocation options and services, all kinds of different incentives to get people to join the Memphis Police Department. And unfortunately, they're still at a significant deficit. What's it going to take to overcome those deficits?
It's going to take a shift in the narrative that we've heard nationally. We have to be the change that we want to see. There ought to be more young people, more people of color that consider and choose careers in law enforcement. Most people that get into that profession do so for the sake of serving their communities. We need to talk more about that. But police departments will not be able to attract and retain the talent that they want if they have to do the recruiting by themselves. Every faith-based organization in Memphis, you've got some wonderful faith-based organizations there. Every one of them, every community group, every neighborhood, every school, particularly the colleges and universities, should begin collaborating with this Memphis Police Department to figure out a way to get some of the people in those communities to actually join the police force. You have a world-class law enforcement executive in the person of the director or chief, C.J. Davis. She's a wonderful leader, but she cannot do it by herself. Every community organization, every faith-based group, every political leader has to come together with Memphis PD and really figure out a pathway forward to get people interested and involved in careers in law enforcement with the police department.
You know, we've heard about that, and that's kind of the rub, Markel, is like getting the faith-based organizations in those communities together in order to help some of the biggest problems in Memphis. I've been a part of this community now for 16 years, and I've seen how important the faith-based community is here, and how important it is to solve those big-time problems and come up with solutions to combat those problems. What's it going to take to really kind of change the idea, change the messaging, change the tone, so that police forces across the country are not only places where you see good, positive things happen, but also organizations that people want to join, that they want to support?
It's going to require a change in posture from community-based organizations, most especially faith-based organizations, away from a protest model to a partnership model. Again, I've been at the forefront of civil rights. I've been jailed many times and led huge protests around police accountability. But at this point, our best march is not on police departments, and especially Memphis, but with our law enforcement agencies. Since the death of George Floyd, we have seen not only a failure of a reduction in officer-involved tragedies, but there's been an increase in officer-involved tragedies, both where officers are taking the lives of people prematurely and where officers are being attacked and assaulted. At the same time, crime and violence is rising. Our posture has to change if we're going to change those things. What I mean by that is we need to look for ways not just to challenge or protest police, but every faith-based organization ought to be looking for a way to partner with law enforcement. And through that partnership, not only can you hold them accountable, but you can support them. And that's what it's going to require. We need a change of posture, a change of narrative, a change of direction. There has never been a movement for positive social change in American history that was not anchored in the faith space. Dr. King gave his life right there in Memphis. He was Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., it was Reverend Ralph David Abernathy, Reverend Fred T. Shuttlesworth, Reverend Billy Kyles. So many great civil rights icons were at the forefront of the civil rights movement because they were faith leaders. We need every church, every single faith-based organization, every single group, not to just challenge the Memphis Police Department, but to collaborate with them, hold them accountable when they're wrong, but when they're right, the vast and overwhelming majority of the time, we have a moral obligation to stand in solidarity with them. And that's what I call upon the Memphis community to do. The police department can't fix itself. They can't fix all the problems by themselves. They need some partners. And that's what those faith-based and community groups should be doing at this moment, this critical moment in history.
You say you are CEO of Movement Forward. Briefly explain what that is and tell us what kind of presence it has here in the Memphis community.
So Movement Forward is a solution-focused human and civil rights organization that's inclusive and modern. We take the best of the civil rights movement principles and move them forward into collaborative space. So it's not just Black versus white. One of the challenges that we've seen over the last several years when it comes to policing that we take a distinctly different posture of or than is we saw too many people in one corner yelling, "Our lives matter," different folks in different corners yelling and screaming different messages. We've never progressed when we separate or segregate ourselves from one another. What we do at Movement Forward is look forward to opportunities to bring communities and law enforcement, communities and governments, communities and corporations together to actually solve problems. Too much of what has become of social justice is adversarial. But whatever it is that we fight, we ultimately invite our principle, the premise of our organization is to bring people together to solve problems. And that's what we're doing in collaboration with the Memphis Police Department. Our anchor signature program is National Faith and Blue Weekend. It's the largest police community outreach project in American history. The Memphis Police Department, Chief Davis and Sergeant Tadero Holmes, and so many other great people there at the Memphis Police Department put together events the second weekend in October that actually bring the law enforcement community and the law and the community at large together. Again, we have to put solutions on the table. The challenges that we face when it comes to crime and trust will not be solved by legislation. They will be resolved by relationship. And that's what we focus on here in our organization, is that kind of relational reformation.
Reverend Markell Hutchins, really appreciate everything that you're doing. We certainly are rooting you on, and thank you for this interesting discussion. We appreciate all the knowledge. And if someone wants to get some more information about this, where can they go?
They can visit us at movementforward.org, movementforward.org, or specifically around Faith and Blue Weekend. And I cannot emphasize enough that we just will not solve these problems in silos. The police department can't do it by themselves, and the community can't do it by ourselves. We need one another. I encourage everybody to visit us at faithandblue.org and follow us on social media at Faith and Blue, and follow me at Rev Markell.
Okay, Reverend Markell Hutchins, once again, thanks so much for the time this morning. We appreciate it.
Good to be with you. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Andrew Douglas of the Action News 5 digital desk. For decades, NASA and NOAA have been keeping careful watch of the Earth's climate, and each year, the agencies release an update to the hottest years on record. Yesterday, they added 2022 to the books. Let's talk about that. We have Dennis Felixson, a NASA research scientist, joining us here on the Action News 5 digital desk to talk about the global temperature data for 2022. Dennis, good morning. Tell us about the latest data.
Having me. Well, with 2022 having come to a close, we can now say that last year was the 5th warmest year on record, tied with 2015. These records go back to the late 1800s. So over that time, 2022 was the 5th warmest. And actually, the last 9 years were the warmest years on that record. Last year was particularly interesting because it was a La Nina year. La Nina is the counterpart to El Nino. And during La Nina years, we tend to have a temporary cooling of the Earth. So even during that temporary cooling, 2022 still came in as one of the warmest years we've ever measured.
You know, it's interesting, Dennis, we had something this week that measured, I guess, the ozone in the atmosphere across the world, and it said that the ozone layer is actually growing. I don't know if that's part of this, but I know that that is something that people have been carefully watching.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as you probably know, ozone, the hole in the ozone was a huge story back in the 90s when I was growing up. That's actually part of the reason I got interested in being a NASA Earth scientist. So the interesting thing about this is that climate change has all sorts of impact, ozone being one of them, and it's also a driver. There are all these feedbacks in the climate system, but it's all interconnected, and that's one of the coolest parts about working at NASA and with satellite data is we get to study the Earth as kind of a whole system and look at different impacts the climate is having, relationship to the ozone, what the oceans are doing, the surface temperature of the Earth, and the impacts that climate change is having on extreme events that we're measuring all around the world.
You know, it's interesting. You mentioned the 5th hottest on record last year, but the story about the ozone layer was that the ozone layer was actually growing. It was actually a good thing, and the hole wasn't as big as it was years ago. How does that counterbalance or balance with the climate data from 2022?
That's right. So that's a good point. If I remember right, we had, the ozone hole was a big story back in the 90s, and then CFCs were banned partially as the result of us discovering this hole in the ozone layer. And that actually had a very positive and kind of fast impact in terms of climate, where the ozone hole saw the ozone hole start to shrink. So it was a direct impact of some policy to ban CFCs. Now, those kind of things are great, and it's nice to see that. But the trend of global warming is continuing, and year after year, on average, when we look over 10-year spans, the Earth is continuing to warm. And so while those kind of things like banning CFCs and the effect it had on the ozone hole are great to see, it's not enough to reverse this overall year after year trend of warming that we're seeing.
I'm sure a lot of these satellites that NASA and NOAA release into space help understand climate, ozone, keeping track of everything. How do those new satellites help really kind of understand the science behind it all?
So from space, we have this really unique vantage point where we have many satellites that are collecting different measurements of different parts of the Earth system all at once. And collectively, we get a much better understanding of the Earth system acting as one whole system with these different components acting in tandem. So last year, 2 of the satellites that we launched, GOES and JPSS, these are launched by NASA and operated by NOAA. These are just the latest in a series of satellites that help us continue to monitor the weather and understand the impact that climate is having on weather and on extreme events. There's another satellite we launched called SWOT, S-W-O-T, Surface, Water, and Ocean Topography, a really cool satellite that's going to give us a look at all of the water that's sitting on the surface of the Earth. So these are oceans, lakes, rivers. Every 21 days, we're going to get a complete snapshot of what's happening. So it's really amazing what we can do from this unique vantage point of space that we can't get from other kinds of measurements on the ground.
So Dennis, a question for you, because I hear this a lot from some of the critics of this and global warming, climate change, is that, okay, if we do some of the things, for example, from the Paris Climate Accord, and we implement some of those standards, that, okay, 30, 40, maybe 50 years from now, our temperature will be reduced by 1/10 of 1% 50 years from now. And so the idea is that we give up all this stuff for just a small fraction of a fraction difference. What do you say to that?
So that's a great question, and these numbers might seem small, but their impact is huge. So even though, for example, since the late 1800s, the surface temperature of the Earth has warmed as the result of human emissions by about 2 degrees Fahrenheit on average. 2 degrees Fahrenheit might seem really small, right? Does it matter if it's 70 degrees outside or 72? That's not going to affect what you put on that morning to go out, right? But the impacts it has are huge, even those small numbers. We're already seeing big increases in extreme events. Hurricanes that are making landfall are able to intensify a lot more quickly because of ocean warming. They're also able to carry a lot more precipitation, and that causes real damage to people and to infrastructure that we have on the coasts. We know that the wildfire seasons are getting longer. That's leaving more and more areas exposed to fire damage. Droughts are getting more intense, heat waves, the atmospheric rivers that we saw hit California last week were as intense as they were because the climate is warming. So every little bit that we can do to mitigate it 30, 40 years from now, even tenths of a degree will matter in terms of the impact of these extreme events.
And again, playing the other side here, Dennis, while we have you here. Okay, so the world has been around for billions of years, and it's constantly warming and cooling and warming and cooling. We only have data from, as you mentioned, the late 1800s. So how are we supposed to say that things weren't hotter in medieval times? You know what I mean?
Yeah, another great question. So the temperature data, the most reliable temperature data, direct measurements of temperature goes back to the 1800s. But we actually have other records that go back much longer than that. For example, ice cores that we've dug up from deep in the interior of Antarctica and Greenland give us a way to estimate the temperature going back hundreds of thousands of years. And that kind of information lets us know that, number one, the Earth has definitely not been this hot in at least 10,000 years and possibly 100,000 years. And again, from that longer term data, we know that the rate at which the Earth is warming now is unprecedented. We've never seen this in ice core records that go back those hundreds of thousands of years. So not only is the Earth hotter now than it has been in 10,000 years, but it's also warming much more quickly than that 100,000-year ice core record that we know of.
You know, it's a really interesting conversation, Dennis. I appreciate it very much. Where can people go online for more information?
So you can find us on the web at nasa.gov/Earth. You can go to noaa.gov, NOAA.gov. And for you social media lovers out there, you can follow us at NASA Earth on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, and at NOAA to follow NOAA.
Okay, Dennis Felixson, NASA science and NASA research scientist. We appreciate you, and I appreciate this conversation very much.
Thanks very much for having me. I appreciate it.
That's my alligator.
All right, that does it for us here in the Action News 5 Digital Desk. Have yourself a wonderful weekend. We have Action News 5 midday coming up at the top of the hour with Ariana Poindexter. And don't forget, we start again on a Monday, bright and early, beginning at 8 o'clock. So have yourself a wonderful weekend.